Mic check, mic check, mic check. We are live Friday evening. The time has come for another session of All Politics of Local America's number one hip hop talk and radio show, coming to you live every Friday with truth, strong and real and raw as we always do it. What a full lineup tonight. I'm Baba Zayid Muhammad. I'm going to walk you through this first segment. We have a return of the family called Dorsey. It's going to be with us, talk about that case and their efforts, their own efforts to make that case move forward the way it should, in light of it not necessarily moving forward the way it should. And we're going to have Carl's stepdad and daughter with us, right, to talk about their concerns and how we can help them do that. And we've got a full show. We've got a loaded show beyond it. And the great Jonathan Austin is going to bring us on in terms of how that's going to go.
We do have a great show. We do have a loaded show tonight. The first thing, as I pointed out, we are really talking about to the family of Carl Dorsey, and what we're going to elaborate on is probably a test of New Jersey's independent prosecutor law. Right? He's going to get fully into that, and we're going to have that conversation at 6:30. We're going to talk to TAPintoNewark's editor Mark Bonano and independent journalist Doshon Farad to talk about two things. Talk about initially the Newark elections, but really to get into a larger conversation about the role of journalists, right? Like, what is objectivity? What are we looking at? And we hope for that to be a really good conversation. Then, of course, we're going to have the vote at 7 p.m. with our community activists having conversations about what's going on in the neck of the woods where they are, right? And then we, of course, at 8 o'clock, Zayid and Donna are going to run down a lot of events for this week and next week. And then at 8:15, we're going to have DJ Rhino. He just came off a really great show yesterday. He's going to talk about that. And also, we have our special guest, Purple Haze. So Purple Haze is a brilliant artist and teacher, and she'll be having a conversation with her and DJ Rhino at 8:15. So it's a great show tonight, and we look forward to having that conversation. So Zayid, you were talking about that this is a test of the independent prosecutor law. I'm going to hand it off to you. Tell us what's going on. We have guests here. We have Medina and Abdul Malik Muhammad. What's up? What's going on right now, especially in terms of this case and what people are doing with it?
2019, the city of Newark had the distinction of going through the entire year without their police department having fired a single shot in the line of duty. Then came January 1st, 2020. On that day, on that evening, that holiday, right, Carl Dorsey ran into the horrible fate of an encounter with Detective Rod Simpkins and lost his life in a way that we had some very serious problems with. Several years ago, as a result of a lot of pressure that we have put on the streets and on the system around this issue, the state instituted the Independent Prosecutors Bill. And I want to shout out Brittany Timberlake, Assemblywoman Brittany Timberlake, who's from this district, right? Who's from this district. Thank you, Medina. I said I got the year wrong. Right.
I was going to chime in and say that too.
Yeah. So Brittany came in as a freshman Assemblywoman and pushed this bill that challenged how investigations of police killings are done in the state. And it's important to appreciate because in New Jersey, the land that gave us the birth of racial profiling, the way things had been done in the past is that county prosecutor's office take over and do those kind of investigations. Those investigations have been horrible at best, or non-existent in some cases as well. So we were very proud that Brittany tried to push that bill through. But now that we have the bill, we have this case and we have several other cases that need some real investigation and some resolution, right? And merit some transparency in the process. So when we say that this is a test for the independent prosecutors bill, that's what we mean. When the story first broke, I want to shout out my sons and daughters from the Mighty Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, because they were the first to really deal with this on the street, right? And we shut down Springfield Avenue when this first jumped off, to let everybody know that we had a serious problem with this, right? There was, there was the beginning of what seemed to be the logical motion of an investigation. To the degree that there was footage, that footage was revealed, and that footage, contradicted the narrative of the police, right? And illustrated why we have these problems that have been costing young men and women their lives on our streets over so many years, and why this really needs to be dealt with, right? Things have since gotten quiet, so we're concerned about that. And we've done some things on the streets with this family to help with that. Now, they recently retained a very good lawyer to help them move that within their own purview, by virtue of their own prerogative as a family, and we want to help them with that too. So we're here to talk about that. So having set the stage like that, let's just let them come in and talk about this young man who they love, and what has not been going on with this investigation, and let's see where we can go with that. And then either one of you can start off. Abdul, you the elder. You want introduce you, Medina. Medina's been on before, right? You were on with us before, Medina, when we had you on earlier, right? And
Yes.
yeah, so it's the mic is yours.
Dad, I'll let you start it off.
Okay. My name is Abdul Malik Muhammad. I'm Carl Dorsey's stepfather. Been in Carl's life since he was about 3 years old. And I always, when I speak at the rallies, etc., I make sure I say I'm a stepfather, so that there's no controversy about whether I fathered him or not. I'm not his birth father. I'm Medina's birth father. Naima also, I'm her stepfather. But I just want to go back to the night in question when this situation happened. And when you said the year, I not right away jumped out. I said, no, that's the wrong year, because it's so vivid in my mind every day. I think about that night, when I got the call from Naima. It was about it was New Year's Eve overnight. So we're coming into the new year of 2001. It's maybe 2:15 in the morning, maybe. And I get a call from Naima. I'm thinking that she's calling me to say, hey, Dad, Happy New Year. And what I get is screaming, going crazy, Dad, they killed my brother. They killed my brother. I'm like, what happened? Well, I'm thinking, somebody in the streets, something might have killed them, something might have happened in the streets. No, Dad, the North cop killed my brother. And I'm like, wow, so I'm up away trying to find where Medina's at, trying to keep Naima calm, etc. And when I see what actually happened, later on that morning, I said, she's right. They murdered her brother. Carl did nothing wrong to be in that situation. And, what I constantly say when I talk to people about this situation is Carl deserved to go home that night, that morning. He deserved to go home to his family the same way that officer went home to his family. And I want people to take a big look at the fact of, what if it was the other way around?
Absolutely.
What if that officer got killed that night by Carl? How much of a backlash would we have got? How much of would it be on the news? How much support to that officer's family, etc., would there have been? But we haven't gotten the same. That's something that we need to check out. And just to make it clear, we've got the lawyer kind of early on in the process, because we wanted to make sure that this thing was brought out to the masses of the people. And we thank the People's Organization of People's Progress, your organization with Larry Ham, Zayid, for being out there with us.
Right on. Medina, you want to jump in?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I get a little teary-eyed and a little broken up almost
It's
every time.
absolutely understandable, and it's all absolutely understandable. And I appreciate how you've been speaking through your pain and your process with that on us on the street. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
As you can.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say again, it's been so hard, so confusing, so frustrating this whole past year. Of course, when something like this happens, like we're expecting um like justice to be swift and to be as quickly as possible, like just as quickly as you took my brother's life away, is just as quick as your behind needs to be in that courtroom and taking responsibility for what you've done. So again, we've been as patient as we can be, given the circumstances, and trying to figure things out and sort things out the best way that we need to. But at this point, I feel like it's like a waiting game. But it's hard. Like it's just hard to deal with. It's hard to think about all the time. It's hard to just think about the fact that I'm never going to see my brother again. His kids are never going to see him again. It's so many things that we're never going to experience together, and it's like it's still unbelievable to this day, and it's something I can't stop thinking about, and I just miss him.
Mm-hmm. Real stuff, and the thing that's particularly disturbing about this, Jonathan, that I want everybody to appreciate it, and my daughter, uh, Dawn Haynes, brought this out very early on, and I'm proud of what she did. Right, is that the officer involved has a bad history. Right, Newark is under the uh, watch of a federal monitor, and it's supposed to be going through a major police reform effort. And some things have been done, but there has not been the kind of total buy-in, shall we say, in that process. And I would dare say that where there's not buy-in is where we is with undercover police officers, and they have been the most rogue and the most defiant about that process. And in this case, looks like a clear expression of what's wrong with that, right? And it points to the limitations of this reform process. Uh, Back in 2010, right, and the great Lawrence Ham is joining us. Back in 2010, when the ACLU of New Jersey documented all these cases we have been dealing with, right, and submitted that to the Justice Department. One of those cases was a case of one Detective Rod Simpkins, who in the Missouri Expressway would jump out and jump out. We're the effing police. You got no effing rights, and would do what they were doing back then, right? And it looks like it's the same kind of situation that put this young man in the crosshairs of something that he had nothing to do with and certainly did not deserve at all. So the time has come now to bring some more attention to this case. And I brought Lawrence Ham on to help us talk about that, because we know the attorney wants to do something real soon to help put some more heat and more light on this case and on this process as we need it. So the few minutes that we have, Adim, I want you to jump in. And when y'all hear me call Lawrence Ham Adim, me and him go back over 40 years. His African name is Adim Chunga, right? And some of us who remember that, we love that, right? Because he got it from the great Amiri Baraka, and that's something that we share in common. But Adim will jump in. Pop has since become a steady force and vehicle of support for the family in this process. And here we are, at another stage in trying to move this case forward. What say you on this matter at this point?
Well, I take my cue, my leadership from Brother Malik, Abdul Malik, on this. If he says there's going to be something coming up soon, then whatever he says, I'm going to be there. And other POP members will be there too. Brother Malik, what you sent me, is that still on for Monday?
We're still looking at possibly Monday, but probably not. Probably going to move it back further than the week.
I'm sorry, I'll just butt in. I did speak to the lawyer. He said that it's not going to be Monday. They're still waiting for, I believe, an approval from the court.
Right.
Okay. All right.
So we're definitely going to keep you in the loop on that, because we want y'all to be there as y'all have been there for us.
Right. Well, we're gonna continue to be with you and to be with the family. I want to ask a personal question, and I hope, Medina, you don't get offended at this. Um, do you need to talk to someone? I could see the tears rolling down your face. And if you want me to reach out to someone, if you feel you need to talk to somebody, I can do that. I can at least put you in contact with somebody, because I know the pain that these killings, these murders have on the families. It's not just the poor victim that's killed. The families
That's right. That's right.
are hurt so seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen families destroyed
That's
behind
right.
this.
That's
I've seen families destroyed. And then I've seen other families who rise to the occasion and exhibit a kind of superhuman strength to fight until they get justice for the person. That's what you got? All right.
That would be us.
That be you? All right. That's what I'm saying.
It's important to raise it's important to raise the dimension of trauma that we're talking about, because these are real lives, right? When that happens to to somebody, it happens to their whole family. Sometimes the way we experiencing this stuff now, live on videotape, it's happening to our entire community, right? And we've got a whole generation who is seeing this stuff on a cyclical basis regularly, right?
Mm.
And then and so we got a whole lot of healing to do in the pursuit of justice. So that's an important dimension to raise about this, and that's one of the things that we always try and do with this, is to lay out the human dimensions, who the person was. We early in the stage, in addition to the protests that we did and getting that footage out first time, there was a decent story, given the limitations of the press as we know it, that actually talked about who Carl was. And in the few minutes that we have left, we should be talking about who Carl was, because that should not be lost either. He was not a statistic. He was not somebody unknown. He was somebody very real to his family, and to his children, and to his community. So we always want to lift that up, and that's always one of the dimensions that's always important to drive as we step to the powers that be and trying to get justice in this. So y'all lift up Carl the way you need to lift up Carl.
Okay. I'll talk about Carl. So first and foremost, before well, he was my brother first, but he first and foremost was a father, and like he took that role very seriously. He was a great father, a great brother. Any title that he held it down well. He was fun. Some of him would think of him as a serious person. He kind of had a serious-ish personality, but when he let loose, fun and funny. And he was me, my sister, my family's protector. And he's a great loss to our family. I'll say that.
Yeah, let me chime in from that. It's a story that I shared, that Medina shared with me, about Carl's protectiveness between him, her, and her other sisters and siblings. Medina was out on the road, either on the parkway or the highway somewhere driving, and she caught a flat tire. And she was somewhere in the area of the state where Carl lived close to, not right there, but a little bit farther out. And she figured, maybe I could call Carl, because he lived kind of close. And she called him. Only thing he said, "Where you at?" And by the time she hung the phone up, he was pulling up.
Yeah.
That's what type of dude he was. He had his sister's heart, his sister's back, his children's back, his family's back. And these are the people that's going to miss him, man. We can talk about all these other people who lost their lives throughout the country, and they matter. But in our family, in that situation, Carl Dorsey matters. And we're not going to let that be just walked over. And we're not going to just let that be overlooked. You know, this gentleman had several kids, 3, 4 kids, that's going to never see him again in his life. He has my 2 daughters that, you know, I'm in this for them. You know, I hate to see my daughter crying. Hate to see my other daughter calling me on the phone crying because their brother is not there. So this is what we got to get to. We got to make sure people understand that the same way that officer went home that night to his family, Carl should have went home that night to his family, and he didn't because of this officer's negligence. So that's where it's at with us.
Well, I just want to say that we will have future demonstrations for Carl. I was just holding off because Brother Malik told me something big was getting ready to happen. So I was holding off. I said that'll be the demonstration, the most important demonstration. But now that is canceled, you know, we will do something.
Not canceled, just, you know, we just got to
reschedule, right? And so we will go forward with planning the next action for Carl, which will probably be after this demonstration we have on April the 4th. But we're not going to let it get swept under the rug. You know, a lot of people would like to see it swept under the rug, but that's not going to happen. Not with this strong family.
That's right.
And not with the People's Organization for Progress.
That's right.
I have a question, and maybe, you know, Zayid and Chairman Hammy, maybe you could answer this. But the independent prosecutor law is in motion. Why aren't we? I mean, it's been over a year. Is that normal to not hear anything, right? Because they're right. Like, the family is right. Like, if it had been a police officer, you'd be hearing it in the media every day. It'd be covered. People would be talking about, well, what happened? You'd be hearing details from it. But in this case, right, like, there's you don't hear anything. So is that good? Is that bad? Like, I don't know how to react to this, because, you know, the independent prosecutor law is a good thing, right? Brittany Timberlake passed it. That's great. Newark made a lot of reforms in terms of policing, a whole year without someone getting killed. Like, what's going on? Is the silence? Are things going on like they should or not? Like, I don't how should we take this?
I'll start and say that one of the reasons why the lawyer is coming forward is because the process needs to answer that question. See, there's no such thing as accountability and trust that's involved without the question of transparency. That there was the beginning of that at the very beginning when they released that video, and we thought things were going to start taking place the way they should, and then things got silent. And also we have to start, you know, just on a functional level, right? You know, the Attorney General's office has been going through a bit of a revolving chair in terms of who's actually going to be responsible for that post over the last couple years, and who's coming into this post is somebody I'm not at all thrilled about, because all he has done is, and this is Attorney General Matthew Platkin, right, is on the question of police reform and police accountability, is trying to bring forward this racial recognition technology, which has been proven to be flawed, discriminatory in its functionality, and racist in its application. That's all he's bringing forward, right? So while the bill did what that bill is supposed to do, we probably need to amend that bill to raise some dimensions of transparency, right? For it to, you know, there's Carl Dorsey, there's Hassani Best, there's Maurice Gordon, there's several other cases, right? And some of those happened before Carl's case, and we haven't gotten anything on any of them either, you know? So this is about, in my modest judgment, putting the Attorney General's office on blast on whether or not this bill is going to be something real, it's going to be about accountable policing, or it's going to be a paper tiger that we need to tear up and put something else in its place.
So let me see if I understand this, right? Like, the law was, people fought for this law to be passed that would assign an independent prosecutor. And it has cases right now where the independent prosecutor law that have been fought up for close to 20 years has been. But it seems like what you're telling me, Zayid, is if they put someone in there, right, who doesn't want to do the job or do the job well, like the person they put in there, right, they might go radio silent. They might not have a track record for dealing with civil rights the right way, because you're talking about the person who's in there right now, who's handling this, was dealing with facial recognition technology.
That's what he's bringing in. That's what he's bringing in. But to your point, Jonathan, it's not just the person who's the attorney general. It's the office. It's the institutional character of the office, right? The state attorney general has a history of not being good on this either, right? So there is a real need to strengthen what we've got in that law to really build some transparency into the process so families don't have to go through this.
And you're talking about both transparency and clearly independence, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing we need to do is look at the amount of time that's given for an investigation in that independent prosecutor bill. Now, I could be wrong, but I think there's a 45-day reporting requirement. And it's been 4 times 45 days, or maybe 6 times 45 days since Carl was killed. But one thing that we will do, we will send an official letter to the Attorney General's office requesting an update to the public. You know, we're not the family. The family can demand even more, but we as concerned citizens, we certainly could send a letter to Platkin saying that, you know, it seems that you've exceeded your reporting deadline requirement here. So the public would like to know what's going on with this case. So we will do that. Because you're right, nobody said anything for about 8 months on this.
Let me go, Father Jonathan, you're muted. Let me go just a step further, just to broaden the context of the Attorney General's role and the Attorney General's history that we need to appreciate. And Demo, I need you to jump into that, and then we got to wind this segment up. Grewal, Gerber Grewal was the Attorney General, and all this was transpiring. And Grewal had the makings and the trappings of being a progressive reformer in his post. Right, and he had these directives, and he was, you know, doing community engagement and these kind of things, right? And they're nice and they're important, right? But they don't have the same thing as the force of law, right? But you know, last year, the year prior to losing Carl, was the anniversary, the centennial anniversary of the advent of racial profiling in this country. That comes from where? The state of New Jersey, with the emergence of its New Jersey State Police, right? And you would think, let me
New Jersey started
this? That's right. But you would think that New Jersey and all of its, high-profile, Democratic leadership and all the stuff that they're professing, should have had some public hearings, some public symposium, taking apart that legacy. And setting forward an agenda of police reform legislation and other actions that would demonstrate them undoing that horrible legacy and practicing the hypocrisy that they preach. Right? That didn't happen. And this is a part of the illustration of that. So the contextualization is not just about who's sitting in the chair. It's how funky the chair is and how funky the chair has been for 100 years.
So racial profiling, as we know it now,
born and bred right here in the Soprano State, and we need to deal with that, right? I want to shout out to Demo because just a few months ago he led a 67-mile march from Montclair all the way to Trenton with a whole lot of folks with him. Right, to illustrate that, what are you going to do, Governor Murphy? What are you going to do, Craig Coughlin, the Assembly, the head of the New Jersey Assembly? What are you going to do, Steve Sweeney, who just got his behind beat because he hasn't done anything, who's the head of the Senate? What are you going to do, Democrats? This ain't Trump. This is y'all. And the time has come for y'all
Right.
to put up or shut up.
That's right.
So let me, I'm pontificating too goddamn much, but y'all know how I get, right?
No,
yeah.
it's
So Demo, Malik, Medina, and any closing remarks y'all want to share. We appreciate you coming on. This
Well,
is
we're not gonna let this get swept
let
under
me
the
say
rug.
this too. They've got a good lawyer. I'm looking forward to getting down with this lawyer. They've got a good lawyer. I'm not going to get into the names and anything. He's done some important groundbreaking work on the question of some segregation in New Jersey that we need to talk about on some other segments. So we're looking forward to having him with us in this fight. But y'all give your closing remarks and your closing insights as we wrap up.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. So I'll be brief. One of the very first articles that came out about my brother's killing, it mentioned what brother Zayid was talking about earlier, that the officers went through de-escalation training, and that in 2020 there were no police shootings or police killings. And I just thought that was a very odd thing to say, or to try to make it as some kind of boast or brag, because you're talking about someone's life you took away. So no matter, it's not a time to pat your policeman on the back and say, well, hey, we did our job last year, but we messed up just now, because it's just not good enough. And I can't believe that statement was even put out there as like a fact, while they were talking about someone's life being taken away. And also, there was a gentleman that spoke on the anniversary of my brother's passing, when we stood in front of the courthouse in Newark. And I may be paraphrasing what he said, but I couldn't agree with him more when he said something along the lines of, like, you can't walk around as a policeman afraid of every young black man in Newark with dreadlocks, because that's a lot of people. Is that you talking about most of the Newark population at that point? So that there really shouldn't be a reason. There's never a reason to walk around unjustly killing someone. Of course, I don't care what your profession is, but it can't be a profiling thing at this point, because again, there's a lot of young black men that look just like my brother walking around Newark. So as a Newark police cop, you got to grow some skin. That can't be it.
And the what I will just ask in the last minute, just also for the family, going back to what Chairman Ham said earlier, and also what going back to what Zayid said earlier, there's a lot of trauma that takes place, right? Like, is there advice that you would give for others going through it, for certain things that you would do for self-care, right? Like, in the last 2 minutes that we have, can you just give like certain things that may be helpful to someone else that you have done in terms of taking the time to actually care for yourself, for the trauma that clearly that is prolonged, right? Because of the nature of what this is.
I would say that it's important to seek counseling, to get some kind of therapy, which I haven't done yet. So, Mr. Ham, I will take you up on that offer. I'd like to speak to someone that's familiar with trauma, or the kind of trauma that I'm experiencing. But that's definitely important. It's important to have some patience. As I said, like, things like this can be long, and it's tough, of course, on the family, but it seems to be a long process. So have patience, go to therapy, and you just have to at some point stop and realize that you do have to take the time to take care of yourself. There's been some time that I kind of missed that, and I have to get myself on track. So you got to just shake yourself out at some point. You don't want to fall into some kind of deep abyss about it, no matter how traumatizing it can be.
Thank you, Medina. That was a mouthful. Thank you. Malik, you want to say something? You're muted. I know you're trying to say something.
Okay. Am I unmuted?
You're good. We hear you now. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say, Medina, I love you, and that's really the key to this situation, man. You have to make sure that your family's members know that you love them, that you have their back, and we're gonna go hard as we can. And I just have to close on this saying that we're putting a lot of pressure, and we're going to continue to do that on the people outside of our families that's responsible for carrying out the laws in the state of New Jersey, but also the city of Newark needs to be held accountable because they haven't done anything. I've heard one call from one person in the city of Newark, some lady that was a reverend or something. She called me one night, a few nights after it happened, haven't heard anything else since. So for Ross Barack and the rest of the city of Newark, the Black Lives Matter movement, NAACP, etc., y'all have not stepped up to the plate on this case. And the people organization of power y'all have, of progress you have, and we welcome you and we accept you and we thank you for it.
Thank you, Brother Abdul. And we're going to do everything we can. I want the family, Brother Malik,
Yes.
put April 11th, Monday, April 11th, on your calendar. We're going to do something around police brutality on Monday, April 11th. So that would be a good platform for Carl's family to come out and raise that issue. It'll probably be in the evening, like around 4:30, 5 o'clock. But put that on your calendar. But we're not gonna let this slide.
That's right.
We're not giving nobody a pass. A man was killed.
That's right.
A man was killed, murdered. And it's like crickets around here, but we're not gonna let that situation persist. So I promise you that we will be having future actions to demand justice for Carl Dorsey. And we will get that letter out, or how they say, certified, return receipt requested. So they can't say what letter. It's going to be certified. So when they get it, they got to sign for it. So there'll be an official record that it was received, and they're going to have to respond. But it's been more than a year, and I think we probably passed every deadline in the independent prosecutor law that they're supposed to get back and make some type of report on their investigation. This is a difficult period,
right?
Because, in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, there was a massive movement in this country to demand justice for Floyd and an end to police brutality. But since then, there's been a massive pushback,
right,
against the movement against police brutality, which of course includes the Black Lives Matter movement, but it includes many other organizations and efforts around the country where people are struggling against police brutality. And this is
Larry, that's actually like a good segue, because I know we're ending this segment and we're getting into the next one. But we're at 7 o'clock also. That's when we're going to have the vote.
Okay.
We have a lot of activists on. Hopefully you can stick around for that as well. Because the larger question about what this means and the backlash and what people are going through, the vote, all that other stuff, I think that's a perfect segue into many of these other conversations. So thank you so much. Thank you for the family that coming out. And I know that you're going to be on our show and we're going to continue to deal with this so that other organizations other news organizations will deal with this as well. So thank you so much.
Drum right on. Okay.
And
call me, Medina. Call me. All right.
All right. And this is All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop talk show. Now this is actually a good way to segue into our next topic, right? It's about journalism, right? Like, now we're going to start off talking about some things about the Newark elections, right?
It's my man, Doshon.
Right.
Mark Bonamo.
Right. So just
you back from Sweden, man?
I was in exile, but I just I couldn't stay away.
We're gonna this segment goes directly into what we were talking about before, right? Like we just finished a segment talking about what gets publicity and what does not get publicity, right? We just started talking about the last segment was dealing with that. So what we're talking about today, right? We're going to start off talking about the Newark elections, but really, when we're going to get into a brief conversation about a debate topic, right? Like I'm a debate coach, right? I always take these liberties to have conversations that kids are all over the United States are debating. During the month of March and April, kids all over the United States who are doing Lincoln Douglas debate are debating, resolved in a democracy, a free press ought to prioritize objectivity over advocacy, right? So I wanted to have really, to talk to two journalists, Mark Bonamo, who's editor of TAPintoNewark. He is a very accomplished award-winning journalist. We're glad to have him in Newark. We have Doshon Farad, who is, in my opinion, one of the best independent journalists in the country, who was covered.
Brothers, I'm gonna have to sign back out. I could barely hear you. For some reason, I'm having connection issues on this end. I'm gonna have to try to come back in. I heard you,
but I'm gonna still say some good things about you.
I can barely hear. I'm gonna have to come back out and sign back in. Give me a chance.
All right.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna still say good things about you, man. So Doshon Farad is one of the best independent journalists, I think, in the country. If there's a Black publication, he has been in it. Black News Show, he's been on it. At some point, have been conversations and covering things that are important. So first, to start out, Newark elections. What do you think is going on? What's happening? Give me some rundown as we segue into the larger topic of what is the role of journalists in covering this. So let's start off, because I know you cover Newark. It's exciting this year. What is your opinion?
Okay, so here's what we've got. For the 2022 elections, May elections, again, New Jersey's its own unique beast, right? A lot of our major municipal elections are in May, not November. Every 4 years, it is an extravaganza in Newark because everything is all on the table all at once. The mayoral seat, our 9 council seats, which is, again, 5 from the wards, north, south, east, west, central, and 4 seats at large. So, because there's a lot at stake all at once in a changing city with still a fair amount of problems, a lot of redevelopment, a lot of money coming in and out, along with all the social issues, things get hectic this time of year. This year is unique in that the mayoral election is essentially uncontested, maybe a few minor candidates. So, it's almost presumptive that Newark Mayor Ras Baraka, first elected in 2014, is going to be reelected. And another unique thing about Newark is we do not have term limits, right? Mayors previous to, you had Sharp James, mayor for 20 years. You had Ken Gibson, mayor for 16. Cory Booker, I believe, was mayor for a good 7 or 8 years before he went to the Senate.
Yeah, about 7.5 years, 7 years.
Right. So there is no limit. So it is conceivable, Mayor Baraka get reelected and then reelected after that. But it's what comes after that, 2026, that could get potentially interesting because of what's going to happen in the council races. Now, historically, as long as Newark has had this type of government with mayor and council, the 9 council members, Faulkner Act since 1954, often the mayor and the council are at odds. Now, for the last couple of years, basically hasn't been so. You've had a fair degree of unanimity, a fair degree of getting along. There's a certain breakdown always in the council in Newark. Demographically, you have, for the last couple of years, you had 5 African-American members of the council, 3 Latinos or Latinx, 1 Portuguese American. And that's kind of almost an idea of this is a basic fault line, even though that fault line has kind of been subsumed for the last couple of years. But things could change if, as a result of some of these council elections, Mayor Baraka wakes up one day and the balance of the council is not necessarily in his favor anymore. Two of the races of the council races are, I think, of particular interest.
Well, I want to stop you for a second. I think that because there were some interesting scenarios, right?
Right.
But I want to start segueing into the topic, or just segueing into the question of, in what you're covering, right? When you're covering the local races, like journalists are always, journalists have been beaten up over the last few years.
Oh yeah, sure.
There's been lots of questions about journalistic. What is news? What is not news?
Right.
Can you put in the context of Newark elections, what is the role of journalists? And can you talk in that about this question of objectivity in journalism and advocacy in journalism? Can you break that down for me in the context of your role as a reporter, right? Like how you see yourself covering this. And Doshon, can you come in after that in terms of just what do you see your role in covering local politics? Or because I know you're starting a journalism class soon. So what is your role as a reporter in covering these things?
Okay. Sometimes I look at the role of all reporters, including myself. You're kind of a conduit, right? There are the elected officials and there's the public. And somehow in the middle, oftentimes are reporters. Reporters are meant to hold the powerful to account by asking questions, basic questions about what they're doing, what their motives are, follow the money, all these basic important issues that I think in many ways has been lost in local journalism. You've seen a lot of the major news organizations shrink in terms of local coverage. I tell reporters that I work with, hey, city council meetings are important, but don't forget the planning board meeting. Don't forget the school board meeting. School board meetings mean so much to people because of the lives of their children. For the zoning board and the planning board, when you see the landscape changing around you, and it's changed dramatically in Newark in the last couple of years, that's where the rubber hits the road, at those meetings. So you're somewhere in the middle. And my job is always to be objective. It is to ask fair questions of people in power, to talk to the public, and more importantly, to listen to the public. You can't have your ear to the ground if your ears are, clogged up because you're only listening to yourself. That's an important factor in all this. Now, in terms of advocacy, perhaps the information that you try to disseminate in as fair and balanced a way as possible, with an even temper, people are going to take that information, they're going to do what they will with it. And some people, with the information that you're hopefully providing to the best of your ability and as legitimately and soberly and responsibly as possible, that could be the fire for advocacy. Now, where things can get interesting is where, are you disseminating information and then people get that information and then the fire burns inside them and then they decide to advocate one way or the other because they feel so strongly? Or are you kind of standing there with a Zippo lighter, hoping to light them up so that they'll act one way or the other? And that can get very dangerous. Look, we've seen it historically, with yellow journalism at the turn of the 19th, 20th century, the Spanish-American War, William P. Hearst saying to his reporter at the time, like, you furnish me the stories, I'll furnish you the war, right? You build something on that.
And Doshon, I see you nodding your head. What are your thoughts on this? You're about to teach a course on journalism, right?
Yes.
And on this question of objectivity, advocacy, what are some of your thoughts on it? And even in terms of what they are?
Well, keep in mind, this is something that we hear every once in a while. The media is often referred to as the fourth branch of government. Okay, that's how we're very influential, and of course, there seems to be oftentimes a love-hate relationship between politicians and the press. We have to keep in mind something that I learned from one of my idols, one of the co-founders. He just became an ancestor of the National Association of Black Journalists, Les Payne. he always told us that it is not our responsibility as journalists or as media personalities to protect politicians or prominent public figures or leaders. What we have seen in the past 20 years is the explosion, I would say, of opinionated journalism on steroids. Now, this is what I always say. We need both. We need journalism and we need advocacy journalism. It should be balanced, but we've seen in the past 20 years on both sides of the political aisle, there's a word that I'm trying to think of it. A saturation of the public, saturation of these news stations with public opinionated, very opinionated. And this is the thing. Many of them on MSNBC and on Fox News, they can always get away with saying, well, you know what? I'm not a journalist, I'm a commentator. But then some of them will turn right back around and say, well, as journalists, we ought to do such and such. So right now we see we see an oversaturation of political ideas being inserted as journalism. Okay, now there's a place for op-ed.
We seem to have lost Doshon, but
froze. Yeah, he was rolling too.
But I'm going to ask this question that may be a little controversial. Is all journalism also?
Oh, I'm here. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yes. Doshon, can you hear you?
Yes,
can you hear me right now? You back?
Yes, I'm back.
All right. So I'm going to say something a little controversial.
Copy. Yes.
To what both of you were saying, right? Like I'm going to, in terms of how you would answer this. Is all journalism, to some extent, advocacy journalism, in that there is no such thing as being objective, even in choosing the stories that we do? As in, right now, it's wall-to-wall Kosovo, and we see what's going on there, and people are talking about it from the perspective of the victims, which is legit, right? But we can also see during Iraq or during Afghanistan, we didn't see the coverage that was as intense as bombs were going off from the perspective of people who were being bombed. Is it that we just need to understand that all journalism is advocacy journalism and be transparent about our perspectives?
John, I'm going to be honest with you. Something that I learned from another idol of mine, Ed Gordon. Ed Gordon, he said that, many of us who are journalists, of course, and my colleague would agree, we went to communication school, journalism school. But as Ed Gordon said, we're taught in journalism school, to be objective, to be non-biased. But as Ed Gordon said, and I have to agree with him, that's actually a myth, because you're going, as a writer, I've done news stories and I've done op-eds. But even when I'm doing news stories where you're supposed to be non-subjective, if you would, you're still going to add your own slant. So I actually agree with you, John. And we've definitely seen that in the past 20 years, as both political parties have used major TV networks as a way of pushing their political agendas, their organs, if you would, their mouthpieces. So I agree with you, John. I'm 100% on your side.
Mark?
What you see is Ukraine is interesting, right? For example, no reporter anywhere, no one is a robot, right? People feel. They can't help it. They think for themselves. They have opinions. You try to keep them to yourself as much as possible, but you can't help feeling. There was a CNN correspondent the other day who there was a woman from Ukraine wearing traditional floral headscarf. She's trying to cross over a bridge, this plank bridge over a river, and the bridge has been destroyed, and she's crying, she's upset, she's disoriented. So the woman stopped what she was doing. She put the mic down and she helped the woman across the bridge. Now, some people will say, well, wait, you can't do that. You've crossed the fourth wall. That's not you being objective anymore. If the woman falls off the plank bridge into the river, so be it. But no, there's times where almost it's inevitable that in a certain way you're going to get involved.
I think I'm going a little further than that, right? Like, Al Jazeera covers the Middle East different than the BBC, different than American news, right?
Correct.
And even in this thing in Kosovo, right? Like American journalists made the decision, right, to send resources into place to cover a story in a particular way, right? Like, even where do we go? What do we cover? What do we see? What is news? Do you think that is also advocacy, as in, this is important, let's go here? That's important. Let's go here. Is objectivity in that sense what we choose is news and is not news? Is that also advocacy of a worldview?
Well, I'm sorry, Doshon, you want to go ahead? No, okay. So look, what's happening again in Ukraine, you have an autocratic regime, right, attempting to overthrow, maybe even annihilate a emerging democracy. So now we all know, because of it's kind of what's happening in the media, the fracturing of the media, why is it that I have to watch MSNBC? Some say skews towards the left, Fox, some say skews towards the right, CNN, somewhat down the middle. Why do I have to watch 3 networks to try to understand in general what's going on in the world? But at the same time, all 3 of those networks, even though, look, there are obviously some very dramatic different interpretations of what's going on in our democracy right now, all of these stations basically have the idea in their head, their editors, the reporters, we are from a liberal Western democracy. We see Ukraine being besieged by, invaded, violated by this autocratic regime. Naturally, the feeling is, well, these are our people. We're sort of on their side. They think more like us. You don't necessarily hear about, well, what's the Russian soldier feeling about this? Or, is it right to say that Ukraine is not a country, as Vladimir Putin says, while the Ukrainians dramatically say, hey, you can go up to St. John's Baptist Ukrainian Catholic Church on the west side of Newark, and they will tell you Ukraine is a country in its own culture. But naturally, I think in many ways, the view is going to skew towards the idea of a liberal democracy, that's the story. The story is that they are being wiped out. You don't necessarily hear the Russian viewpoint, maybe as intricately in detail, except for the idea of everyone's trying to figure out what's in Vladimir Putin's mind, what is instructing him to act the way he is.
So in that, right? And again, this goes back to a question of objectivity. Is objectivity even a thing in the way that we think of it as unbiased? As in, should we just all admit what our biases are and then report from there? Hey, we're not trying to be unbiased. Here are my biases. Here are my skews. Here's what I'm covering. And even in covering local cases, right? Whether it's the classic white girl who is who disappears, or who has to be found, right? And all the Black people who don't get coverage, right? What's included, what's not included. Even what you're talking about is in what is news? Is a local school news, or is it do we ignore that? Do we ignore what's going on? Do we ignore what's going on with the independent prosecutor, or do we forefront it? Even in what we choose, aren't we all advocates?
Well, I mean, you could argue potentially that myself and my news organization is an advocate for Newark because we're choosing to be hyper-local. We're choosing to focus on things that are happening in our community every day, things that we see on the street. I live here in Newark. I go outside. I see it. I say to myself, okay, this is something that matters to me. Does it matter?
Gentlemen, if you can hear me, why is this connection is acting up? I'm sorry. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you very well.
I can hear you great. Go ahead.
No, unfortunately, you all keep periodically coming across as choppy, but it's the connection, I think, on my end. I'm using Wi-Fi, but I'm also using data. Did you just ask me a question, John? I'm sorry.
I did, but yeah, it is true. You are coming through choppy. Doshon, you are coming through choppy.
I can't hear. John, you sounded very choppy on my
Doshon, I'm going to hit you in their comments. I'm going to hit you in the comments for the private comments in here. Just look through the private comments because you are actually coming through a little choppy.
Let me say this while he's trying to adjust from a Black press tradition point of view, is that Black press has had a singular responsibility by virtue of the racial legacy in this country to be an advocate on, right? And in its advocacy,
I was going to mention that too.
To push the question of ethics that is supposed to govern journalism, regardless of what slant you come in on the political spectrum. There is supposed to be some basic commitment to reporting a story accurately, right, and being about holding officials accountable for their responsibilities as certain things take place. So the black press, right, and Doshon, lifted up some of the folks that he has looked up to, has had that kind of historical responsibility. So I get suspicious of black journalists who don't roll like that.
What I was going to say now, just to think, Zayid, actually, what I was going to say, Zayid, when John said he wanted me to speak about the school, we have to keep in mind that in regards to the African American press, the advocacy that you mentioned, March 16th, 18th of next week, remember that's the anniversary of the first African American newspaper journal by Russworm and Cornish. We have to understand the first black papers in America were advocacy outlets. What were they advocating against? They were advocating against, right from the very beginning, they were advocating against.
At that point,
you went out again.
He was referring to the abolitionist origins of the black press,
like IDB Wells.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes, sir.
You're going
Ida, right? Well, no, Ida came later. Ida came later.
No, I was talking about just the spirit, right? Like the spirit
Absolutely.
of.
Yeah, this is early. Ida came later.
If you're black,
right?
If you're black,
Definitely, but most
there's going to be some perspective,
right? But if you remember, we saw that of course, we saw that during the antebellum South. We saw that during Jim Crow. We saw that during the Renaissances, not just in Harlem, but the various Renaissances across the country, and then the Civil Rights Black Power movement. We saw our publications always dealing with some aspect of the struggle, of the Black liberation struggle. And that was one of the reasons why at one time we had well over 100 Black publications in America at one time, well over 100.
Now
and
they
were documented. Go ahead.
I was going to say, here's a shift, a brief shift that I want to ask you about, right? Like, this is about there's a book called The Elements of Journalism by Bill Kovac and Tom Rosenstock, right? It's supposed to be one that they want all journalists to read, and they had a very interesting
it's like a Bible,
right? And it was a very interesting take on what journalism was, or the concept of objectivity was, right? Like they said objectivity wasn't necessarily about not having bias. They were like, objectivity is really something that was supposed to be taken from the social sciences, as in like the scientific method, as in you're transparent about the evidence that you have, right? Like, as in, here's what I got, here's the evidence, here's the transparency, here's the dialogue to see what's important to the people I'm serving, right? So it's kind of like, if I'm a journalist, then I'm serving my audience. I need to know who my audience is. So I'm not objective, I'm connecting to my audience. And then the second part was simply like, well, if I'm a journalist, I'm not unbiased, but because I'm not unbiased, I need to be transparent about my information. So it's kind of like the way he described it seemed to be very similar to debaters, right? Like we have positions, but we're transparent about our evidence, and everyone can look at our evidence, and we form our perspective based on that evidence, but the evidence turns transparent and comes first, and people are trained to look at the evidence. What do both of you think about that in relation to journalism? Because that's very different than the standard of objectivity that we normally hear and see and what we react to. It seems like it's more like, don't have anonymous sources when you can help it, because transparency is everything and people need to contest your evidence, right? And so it seems like observation and like a scientific method, like as in, here's the evidence, here's how I got it, and that becomes the most important element of, quote, objectivity.
I mean, there's a tradition, the idea of pure objectivity.
Well, I've always believed in sightings.
Go ahead, Doshon. Go ahead.
What I was going to say briefly is that I've always saw it as common sense of citing sources. Anytime, say for example, if I'm doing an investigative report.
Doshon, I think we're losing you again.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear
me
you now. We can hear you now. All right, we could hear you like 5 seconds ago. I'm not sure about now. All right, we can hear you now. All right, you're going in and out. Now we can hear you.
Okay, Mark, go ahead. I'm sorry. Mark, go ahead, because this thing's gonna keep chopping up. I want to hear what Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Figure it out, man.
Mine is acting a little shady over here.
We'll get right back to you.
Go ahead.
You know, every time, and it's funny because every time you do that, you just come through perfectly. But let's go. All right, so Mark.
I think there's two ways to look at this. The concept of pure objectivity in journalism is something relatively new. It is something from the 20th century. You know, I was already referring to William Hearst from the 19th to the 20th century in terms of, you know, definitely being an advocate for a purpose of, you know, America going to war. But you could literally see it in the names of the newspapers. You know, the Hunterdon County Democrat, the Waterbury, Connecticut Republican. They're telling you right up the bat on the masthead how they feel and which way they roll in terms of partisan politics. But, you know, we've tried to get away from that. But at the same time, you know, you look at the results of the 2016 election, many members of the media community didn't seem to challenge Donald Trump enough. They didn't potentially take him seriously as a potential candidate until maybe Labor Day. And then even after the fact, once he was elected, it took the media a long time to start definitively saying this statement made by the president is untrue. The election was not a fraud. To come out and concretely say that, because things had to get that bad, that 20th century tradition of objectivity, you know, seemed to fade away almost out of necessity because of blatant untruths at certain points being stated by, you know, the chief executive of the United States.
Like, in other words, in order to report about the truth, you had to be an advocate.
You had, yes, you had no choice.
You're lying.
Because it was straight lies. There was a point where, how can I repeat a lie and be a responsible journalist anymore? How can I be objective if I'm saying a lie? No, I actually have to, you know, like you say, be an advocate, take a position, say something is a lie to get the truth out in the best way possible.
And I know we're running. We are running definitely out of time, and I just want to end this section. But first, to thank both of you for coming on, because I think that this added a lot to the conversation that we were having about the topic. I think that this is I think it's something that has to be talked about more. We normally don't have conversations about journalism and journalism from different perspectives. So thank you both for coming on. But I'll let you have a closing word on this. And Doshon, you'll have the last word.
One thing I think that was important you were saying before on my end, you know, as the last word, is you talked about the need for there to be, you know, some sort of voice in certain communities where they weren't heard before, which in a way, just by having a voice is advocacy. You know, in terms of the African-American community, there's a fine tradition of, you know, in New York, the Amsterdam News, in Baltimore, the Afro-American, newspapers that served a community when they weren't being heard at all, and they weren't being heard in the larger newspapers in those cities. I think what you're having now in cities like Newark, places like Newark are in many ways dramatically undercovered, as you had the tide of local news recede from these larger news organizations, you know, from, you know, the New Jersey Advanced Media, from the Newhouse family corporation, the Star Ledger. In many ways, or in fits and starts, they cover Newark. The Newark Star Ledger, it used to be. Now they're in a strip mall in Woodbridge somewhere. So this has given rise to organizations like us, like TAPintoNewark, where we're actually covering things on the ground every day. You know, we literally live here. We have offices here. And in that very act becomes an act of advocacy, even though we're trying to do extremely objective journalism, go down the middle of the road, talk to everybody, give everybody a chance in the government that we're trying to hold accountable to let their voice be heard in response to questioning. Just the fact that we're here, you know, doing this, not forgetting about, you know, the state's largest city full of very vibrant communities and you know, demographic sectors and people who have something to say, that in and of itself, just by doing your job, becomes advocacy.
All right, and thank you. Doshon?
Well, I would just like to, you know, remind people that, remind the press that, you know, it's not our job to it's not our job to protect certain prominent figures. Our job is to get the truth out as best as possible, but also to document. Keep in mind, as media people, specifically those of us who are in the writing field, we're not writing about historical events after they happen. We are actually writing history as it's taking place. And we have to understand is that things that we report on now or comment about media-wise, especially in the age of the internet, people are going to be reading our materials for the next, several centuries. So, we're shaping the future. We're actually, journalists and writers are actually policymakers. And once again, we are considered to be the fourth branch of government, and we have to take that very seriously. And remember, that can be used for good or bad, as we've seen in the past several decades.
Thank you both for being on the show. We're going to have you both back on, hopefully many times. I like both of you on together in terms of just having this conversation about journalism and having a large conversation about what it is that we're facing, what it is that we cover, like what do we hear, right? So thank you both for coming on.
Thank you.
As we go into our next segment, which is the vote. And Larry, hopefully you will stay on for this segment as well, so that we can have that, because we love, Larry, that the community activist segment that we talk about in the vote. So thank you both for coming out. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having us.
And we'll definitely have you back.
Thank you.
Take care now.
All right. So this All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop talk show. So we are on with the vote, right? And on the vote, we have conversations with activists, people who are doing various things, people who have who really bring about change in various ways. So we are expecting Raquel Lumumba to be another member to join us, but we are happy to have Reverend Conrad Tillard on and Larry Ham on for this segment. Conrad Tillard, legendary hip hop minister, talk show host, activist, bringing people together for like 20 to 30 years.
He featured in them colleges too. He got some scholarly stuff going on there.
Yes, absolutely. And we also have Larry Ham, legendary activist, that I always talk about, who is a book coming out sometime very soon about his life and all the things that he's done. But a nationally known community activist who we and chairman of the People Organization for Progress, an organization that was inspired to meet once a week by Amir Baraka's African World Revolution. And they've been doing that for over 30 years, I believe.
40.
I was going to say, you gave me 20. I'm at 30. Larry and Zayid at 40.
Wow.
30 plus.
He's at 50.
Yeah,
I'm at
43. 20.
Wow, fair enough. Right, because Larry, you started when you were like 14. So,
well, if I start from where I started, it would be 51 years.
Wow.
It's 40 years. It's 40 years since the founding of POP. This year,
Wow.
22 is 40 years.
40 years.
101
Wow.
Washington Street, the headquarters of the Black Organization of Students in Rutgers, Newark.
And of course we also have our constant co-host, our constant co-host, co-producer, good friend. We have Zayid Muhammad on as well. I wanted to give you that shout out because, like, all the stuff that you've been doing also for 40 years. 40 years.
I was 18, right, and that was 42, going on 43 years ago. So yeah.
Okay, so a lot of years with people in the struggle. So I'm gonna start off with you, Conrad. What's going on that we need to know about? What are some of the things that are happening that we need to know about? I know that you are real tight in New York City with the mayor. I know that he was your person. I know that you are personally friends with the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, and that you've talked about him knowing him from the time when he was also on the street and the front lines and protesting police violence. What's going on right now? There's a lot of controversy, I'm sure, with the mayor of New York City, and a lot of pushback from activists who are on the ground. And what's going on, man?
Well, First of all, yeah, he's my personal friend, but I met him. He's my friend like Larry is, and like Zayid, and like Ed, and you. We met in the context of struggle. We're not drinking buddies. We know each other from struggle. And I know him. I know his heart. I know what he's striving to do. I'm not sure what controversy you're talking about. He has a big job. He's been on the job for 3 months. He's got people from the right saying he should have done something about the disproportionate amount of crime that's taking place yesterday, or he should have done it 6 months ago, and he's only been in office 3 months. He's had conversations with the legislature. Again, our good brothers and sisters, Carl Hasty and Andrew Stewart Cousins, and people like Charles Barron and all the people we know that work to bring about bail reform. So he's juggling a lot of balls in the air, and at the same time, he's trying to keep and work with that same legislature and keep and maintain mayoral control of the schools. So it's a very complex chessboard on which the brothers playing. Why don't you start by telling me what controversy were you referring to? Jonathan?
Hi, yes. The only controversies that the controversy that I've heard often is when he's talking about policing, and he's talking about bringing back stop and frisk, the words that he was using. I didn't want to mention it specifically because I know there's other things that are going on as well, and I know we're going to go back to that in a particular time. So, but there are controversies that both policing, there are controversies that deal with education, and what's meant in terms of the magnet schools in New York City. That's constant controversy, not just his. The controversy that was really the one that many different people who care about police violence, etc., are always like, stop and frisk. Like you want to bring it back? Like, come on, Eric, really? Like, come on, you want to do Bloomberg? So those are things that that's probably one of the most.
Okay. Well, and listen, I love what Brother Doshon said. Our job as journalists, activists. I'm not a journalist. I'm an activist. I do an opinion radio show. But our job is not to protect important people. So what I think it's fair game. First of all, I haven't heard him use the term stop and frisk. So let's be fair. He has to do something about crime. Crime is out of control in the city. He was elected by the people of the city of New York. Crime has gone up in some instances 70% since he's taken over. So I mean, he was elected with a mandate to stop the crime, and so he's grappling with that. He's struggling with that. He's gone to meet with the legislatures, a body which he served in. He has said that he needs to get a unit back out on the street to get guns off the street. The street crime unit was famous for being plain clothes. He has said that those kind of units are a tool, and if they're misused, a tool becomes a weapon. A hammer can tack a nail in, it can kill somebody. He said that his officers will wear clearly identifiable jackets, that they will be identified as NYPD. And quite frankly, the right is attacking him for saying that then what's the purpose of having an anti-gun unit? So yeah, I mean, everyone has opinions. People have opinions. But the fact of the matter is, as Wilson Good said, I know some of y'all say I can't talk, but one thing's for sure, I is the mayor, and Eric is the mayor, not these activists, not me, not you. And it's just like Mayor Baraka in that city. At the end of the day, he's got to protect the citizenry. That is one of the jobs of the mayor. And I know some strong FOI captains and lieutenants that also took that job serious of protecting people. So this is not unknown and foreign to us as a community.
And so the stories that I was talking about were stories that we're talking about the bringing the quote jump out boys back, right? Like, and what they were known for in New York, the anti-crime unit. And the question that I have is, and if we're saying that, and I'm just asking, if we are to be policed a different way, why use tactics that were so inflammatory before?
Well, let me just say, first of all, he has met with a lot of different people. He still to this day refuses to meet with Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. He is still excoriated and attacked every day by Greg Kelly, Ray Kelly's son, because he clearly has signaled that he doesn't want to return to the days of Giuliani. But when you say tactics were inflammatory, they were inflammatory for one reason alone. We know what police do. Police are responsible for arresting people who commit crimes. The only thing we've ever said in the African American community, we have never said, at least I haven't, and the organizations I've been in have never said we don't want police. The only thing we've ever said is that we do not want police to misuse their authority, to harass the citizenry, to arrest innocent people. Under Giuliani, the street crimes unit and the jump out boys, that's just a characterization. That's not what Eric said. That's what somebody's characterizing. These guys had a quota. They were told that they had to be proactive. So that meant sometimes they would have to come back into the precinct with 30 contacts or 30 stops. He's not adding quotas. He's not saying that they have to stop 30 people or 40 people. So there's a lot of things that are very different. So, I understand the concern. I mean, I've marched and protested and went to jail against the street crimes unit like everybody here. And so, this is not, and Eric did. So I think, again, he knows what good policing is. And I think we should give him a chance. I mean, he's got to deal with, there was a shooting of a young brother up in the Bronx. He's got to deal with those kinds of things. But I don't see it as the same, at least not at this point. But I assure you, if it is, and if it's abusive of our folks, my voice will be raised against it.
Okay, I want to bring in Rakia Lumumba. And first of all, thank you for coming on. Welcome. Rakia is the head of the People's Advocacy Institute in Jackson, Mississippi. Longtime activist, political organizer, political operative in Jackson, Mississippi. Very much responsible for a lot of the policies, or at least as someone who is very much policy affiliated within the city government. First, welcome. And just to bring you right into this conversation before I ask you about specifically some stuff in Jackson, what do you think about the conversation about policing, gun units, crime? How is Jackson, Mississippi handling the very delicate issue of dealing with crime and respecting the rights of Black people?
Yeah. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. It's been a minute since I've been able to be on the show. So glad that I could join today. I lived for 10 years in New York, came back to Jackson in 2016. In New York, I was doing a lot of work. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you well.
A lot of the work, same work that I'm doing now, but my work in New York really focused on providing alternative to incarceration programs for young people. And so during my time there, oversaw programs that ended up working with over 4,200 young people during my period there, during, the stop and frisk era. So I know firsthand the significant and long-term collateral consequences of using traditional law enforcement methods to solve problems. And I think, our people are in a very complicated situation, right? As we've been since, we got to this country, and since we were, allowed to have some basic rights of freedom, we've been, since the days of the slave patrol, we have been faced with the same hard, complicated, nuanced debate and desires. One desire of being safe, right? Um, since the time we have existed in this country, there has been, harms that we've committed against each other. Human beings commit harm against each other. That's a part of what it is to be a human being, unfortunately. And so we've always wanted some system that would actually decrease those harms and keep us safe. The systems that we have currently in this country, especially the system of policing, has not been successful in keeping us safe. It hasn't actually been successful not only keeping Black people safe, but people in general, white and poor people. I've studied policing for decades. I studied the punitive and penal system in the United States for a very long time. And I think we have to look at the roots of it to determine what is really going to work, regardless of whether it's a Black body that's instituting it or a white body that's instituting it. The root of policing itself is bad, and the root of racism is bad. And when you have those things coupled, where we find ourselves is in a very difficult situation, where even when it's a Black body and a Black-led force and a Black-led administration, when we use the same tactics that have been used against us for a long time by white-led entities that taught us these tactics, we see that we have the same results. Because we've also adopted the mindset of how to implement those tactics. So when we're policing folks in plain clothes, we're already assuming who the guilty folks are. And oftentimes, we're profiling our very people who may not be guilty at all. And so I think that what we have to do is that we have to engage in a deeper conversation, but more importantly, a deeper process of getting to what are the solutions? What different can we do? What is something different that we can do to solve this problem? Because we've seen and I'm in a Black city, 88% Black, with a 90% Black police force. And cities across the nation, including Jackson, are resorting to old ways of policing. And we're not seeing any decrease in violence as a result. But we are seeing a greater increase in the criminalization of our communities. And so we have to begin to ask ourselves, what can we do different? Why do we got to keep following their same old methods? What can we do different? And I know that's a hard job, and it's labor intensive and it's time intensive. But I think anytime we actually plan and take the time to strategize and think, that we have long-term better results. And so, for example, and I don't think it's going to be that hard for us to engage in that work. We have examples of alternatives of policing that don't require us to go back to the old ways. And if we invest more money into those type of programs, such as violence intervention programs, such as credible messenger programs, such as, I don't know the exact framing for it, but basically it's domestic violence programs that are actually community led and driven and actually keep people safe. There are a number of programs out there that exist that we can begin to place more resources in and see a growth in those programs and thus a decrease in violence. I mean, the data shows that these programs decrease violence at a faster rate than police are able to, right? And it's not to say that, these programs are the end all be all. We think that there has to be a growth in all types of programs that deal with people's mental health needs, the challenges, the anger, the whatever causes a person to engage in violent acts. We have to do that. But I think we are making poor decisions in trying to have a quick fix to the problem by just arresting away the problem, and thus putting more funds in law enforcement instead of actually funding communities, resourcing communities. And when we really resource communities, we'll see that. I'm sorry.
I was gonna ask you. One of the reasons why I love having you on the show is because you don't just have an activist perspective. You're an insider in Jackson, right? Like you help run things. You're very influential in that. So what does that look like in terms of how do you get buy-in to that? Is that something that's going on in Jackson? And how are you balancing the concerns of people who say, we need more police? We Black people, we need more police. We need, we demand more protection with your understanding of there are better programs. Like how, because I think that's what one of the things that Eric Adams might be dealing with is that there's demands or pressures to deal with crime, but there has to be, and so I think that those things are, how do you push back against those demands?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And also I would like, so I'll answer that question by saying this. One, who are the people making the complaint? And I think we have to listen to who are the people making the complaint. Oftentimes we find it's the neighborhood associations. It is the folks that are able to come to the cops meetings, the public cops meetings. It's the folks that are coming to the ward meetings, or district, your county, your city council members meetings. It's folks who are already hyper engaged because they have a different stake, right? When we talk about neighborhood associations, it's normally folks who have the ability to own their homes and are of a different mindset, right? And so what we're learning is we're paying attention to who is actually making the claims, and not to discount those because they're important, because we want everybody in our community to feel safe, but to also get a balanced perspective. What does it look like for those communities that don't have neighborhood associations, who most of the folks that are living there are renters? What are they saying? Now, what I'll tell you that we are doing is we're surveying community. That's what we're doing. And we're not always doing it right. And we sometimes mess up. So and every time we fail to survey community before we act, we see a great problem. So, for example, right now in the city, we have a great problem because the city decided to implement a policy to create roadblocks to stop folks, to determine as a deterrent to crime, and community members are in uproar, right? And normally our process is to actually engage community members first to find out what are the problems and then what are some suggested solutions. Well, we failed to do that. And instead, the police department just decided we're going to just do this and we're going to do it en masse. And then we're going to have a press conference and talk about it, right? And so what we're seeing now is that community is upset because a lot of folks, it's hindering a lot of folks' daily lives and also criminalizing folks who are poor, right? And so to answer your question, one way to do better is to actually survey a diverse grouping of people. So right now we just surveyed 1,000 residents to find out, are they ready for a police oversight commission or some type of body that would have a community-based oversight entity that would have oversight over the police department. 1,000 residents, right? Over 80% of those residents indicated that yes, they wanted something like that. That they felt that they loved that, that they actually thought the police, were overall doing a good job, that they felt like their jobs were hard, that they felt like the police respected community. And at the same time, they said, and we need to have oversight because they do violate people's rights at times. And we want to make sure that there are less instances of that than there are that are currently happening, right? So I think, I hope that helps to answer your question a little bit, because I can keep talking like this is, let me stop.
No, it was an excellent answer. I like the part about the survey. and the part about the buy-in, right? And if Larry or Zayid also want to comment on what was said, because I think that we're hearing different perspectives about dealing with the same problem from different cities and different perspectives, different states and different perspectives. Larry or Zayid.
I was just gonna say there was one thing I wanted to add though,
Okay.
that Reverend Conrad mentioned, and that was that.
All right, so this might be a day where people's things are. Wait, Rakia, you're muted. I'm trying to unmute you. Rakia, you have to unmute yourself. All right. Well, until we get her back, yeah, because she is muted. Until we get her back, Zayid or Chairman Ham. Hello, I can't hear. Or is it just me?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm unmuted.
At first, I thought it was just me. I was like, wait, I can't hear. Rakia,
No.
wait, Rakia is now you're back as
She's
well.
back. She's back.
Rakia, we couldn't hear you for the last like 3 minutes. Also, if you could turn your light on as well, because we can't see or hear you. All right, so I think she's coming back in. She's going to come back in. So, Chairman Ham.
Yes, I think, Jonathan, it's good that you have both my friend Reverend Conrad Tillard on and Rakia, because we're getting two very real views that are reflected in the Black community. Both have a basis. I'm a former district leader. Many years ago, I was, I think in New York, Conrad, y'all call them precinct captains. In Jersey, we call them district leaders. So I was an elected district leader. And I was a district leader who met on a monthly basis with the residents in my district. This was in the early 80s, 1981, I think, through 84, I was a district leader. And I'm going to tell you, here's a little anecdote, right? When I moved back home from school, from graduate school in 1980, the first day I picked up a newspaper, I saw something that really shocked me. Now, everybody knows Newark, and they know Newark is the epicenter of the Newark Rebellion that took place in 1967, one of the most cataclysmic rebellions, probably only second to the rebellion that took place in Detroit in terms of the number of lives lost and people hurt, people arrested, and people put in jail. But in both places, state of emergency was declared and martial law was implemented. The National Guard was brought in to put down the rebellion. So those of us who lived there, and then during the 60s, we were like anti-National Guard, right? Because they came in and we were under military occupation. I mean, I was old enough to understand what was going on. I think it was like 12 or 13, the summer of 1967. And, it wasn't that just that the Guard came in and put down the rebellion. They went door to door to look for quote unquote contraband, stolen goods. They came to our house. They set up a military checkpoint right at the intersection of my street, 12th Street and 16th Avenue. I saw half tracks, which are small tanks and, all kind of armored vehicles and everything that they were using in Vietnam. They brought it to Newark and they brought it to Detroit, including in Detroit, the 82nd Airborne. They brought them back from Vietnam to help put down the Detroit Rebellion. So when I get home from school in 1980, I pick up the newspaper and what do I see? I see an article about the Vailsburg Block Association. And the leader of the Vailsburg Block Association, Jonathan, where Vailsburg is, that's in the West Ward of Newark. The leader of the, that's right. The leader of the Vailsburg Block Association is calling for the National Guard to return to Newark because that person felt that the Newark police were not adequate to deal with the level of crime. So crime was an issue then, and crime is an issue today. It's a real issue. And those of us who are on the path to take control of cities and towns, to implement Black power and people's power, we have to be cognizant of the fact, you know, not only do we need strategies to implement those innovative things that we want to see, we also have to deal with the day-to-day issues that the masses of the people are confronted with. In my own house, Jonathan, on West End Avenue, I lived down the street from you back in those days,
Right.
you and your
West End
family.
Avenue.
That's right. My apartment was broken into 4 times in 1 year. That's why I had to move out of Newark, because my wife, she wasn't having it.
That must have been during the late 80s when the era was crack. Yes.
I've been
Everything
robbed.
was disappearing.
I've been robbed at gunpoint. I've been jumped and beat up. Had my car broken into numerous times. So crime is a real issue. So when radicals and progressives, and whatever we call ourselves, you know, Marxist, Leninist, Black nationalists, Pan-Africanists, whatever, when we take control of these cities, we also take responsibility for dealing with the day-to-day problems of the people. And there's the contradiction, because on the one hand, people want to live in safe communities, but on the other hand, in many instances, they have to be kept safe from the people who are responsible for keeping them safe.
Right.
And this is the dilemma that we see ourselves in now. In the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, more people demonstrated in the United States and around the world about the murder of George Floyd and police brutality than people demonstrated during the Vietnam War. And in the wake of those demonstrations, there was a push for change in policing and reform in policing. Many bills were introduced at the local level, in state legislatures, and at the federal level. But 2 years after the murder of Floyd, hardly any of those bills have actually been passed, a small number. So there was more smoke than fire. And more than that, there has been a pushback. See, this is the tricky part about it. When you run on a platform of dealing with crime, you put yourself almost in a kind of quicksand situation. Because all of us on this panel, when we were born, there was crime. There's crime today. And when we die, there's going to be crime. Because the underlying roots of crime are never really dealt with. And we know what those underlying roots are: poverty and unemployment and all the concomitant problems that come with them. But what happened was, as there came for a push for reforming policing, there was a backlash against it. A backlash that was led by the police organizations. And basically, everything else has fallen in line with that. So much so that whereas Biden, when he was elected, was saying one thing about police brutality, and not 4 months later, he's actually campaigning against defund the police, which really, regardless of what you think about it, it was a slogan for, in fact, changing the way policing is done. And this is, I think, is the, and I want Mayor Adams to succeed. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But the problem now is that there's this pushback against police reform. But what caused those millions of people to demonstrate in the streets has not changed. In fact, the police killed more people last year than in any previous year. They killed almost 1,100 people. And they got a quote. You talk about quotas. They kill 1,000 people a year. The police in the United States kill more people than any police force in the industrialized world of the 34 OEC countries. The advanced industrial, no other police kill as much as us. And here's the other thing. The United States has the second largest police force on the planet Earth, only exceeded by the People's Republic of China. But the People's Republic of China has 4 times the size of the US population. They have 1.4 billion people in China, but they have roughly 1 million sworn police officers. We have almost 1 million sworn police officers, but we only have 335 million people in the United States. This is a barrack state. We have 4% of the world's population. We have 25% of the world's prisoners. We have more people in prison than China, Iraq, and Iran combined. We have more police than any other nation except China. And the New York police force has the largest budget for police in the world. So in the face of all that, yes, we have to deal with the issue of crime, but we have to have a radical program for dealing with the issue of crime. As Sister Rakia said, we can't trot out the same old stuff dressed up in a different way and say we're gonna solve crime. The stop and frisk program was not just a bad program. It was declared unconstitutional. They arrested more Black men in New York than lived in New York. So this is the contradiction that faces us. So I just end with this. There are other ways to deal with crime beside having stop and frisk type units. I heard Police Captain Corey Pegues, who is a New York City police captain, on a show. And he talked about how he reduced crime in his, and he was in one of those 33 high crime districts in New York City. And he was able to reduce crime through the deployment of the police in a way to really confront the issue and not just try and meet an arrest quota. That shit is like picking cotton. We gonna arrest so many today. You know, that's like picking cotton. That's what was going on at that time. So yes, crime is a real problem. We got to deal with it, but we have to have a radical, and there are progressive and radical strategies for dealing with crime.
I wanted to bring back in Rakia and then go to Conrad. But Rakia, when you popped out, you were in the middle of saying something like, I got to talk about this. What was it? And what were you talking about in terms of the specificity in which Jackson is dealing with it? I believe you were talking about you had surveys. There was trying to buy buy-in from people who were concerned. But then your microphone went out. What were you talking about?
Yeah, so sorry. I guess y'all didn't hear. I'm not sure what you did hear, but you know, I just gotta say, Brother Ham just laid it out very clearly what the problems are and how we need to be working towards the solution. And so, you know, I kind of don't have anything else to say about it from, you know, after hearing that, because I think it was very clear and I appreciate that. The one thing I was trying to say is that we did do a surveying process, and I hope you all heard that part, and residents responded indicating that, yes, they respect the hard job that the police have to do, that they do feel that overall police in Jackson have a respect for the community, but that they believe that you know, over 85% of folks who we surveyed said that they also believe that there needs to be community-based accountability for police, and that police do violate folks' rights, and that we need some type of reform, right? And so I was just, you know, saying that to show that it's a hard thing. It's a complicated, it's nuanced for folks. In the same way the brother just mentioned. The other thing
No. You were saying. I was just going to add that you talked about community buy-in as a thing, but then segue into what are you saying next?
So real quick, the other piece I wanted to mention is that Reverend Conrad mentioned that the buck stops with these mayors, right? Whether it's Eric Adams or Mayor Lumumba or Mayor Baraka. And what I want to say, and I don't know if you heard this part, was that what we're trying to do here in Jackson is shift that tide, is shift that thought process, that the buck stops with one leader, and instead an understanding that we're engaged in a co-governance process, which means that even as residents, we are actual developers and real parts of the process and the decision making around the policies and practices that govern our lives. And so moving away from this idea that the buck just is going to stop with any one person, and understanding that actually it should always be a process of collaboration, and understanding that that's how we get to the root of having full buy-in, but also full participation, and create better systems that actually do and engage us in creating the radical change that we need. One person isn't going to have all the answers.
And that's when you're buying into what you do with the People's Advocacy Institute?
Maybe. I don't know. But that is what we do. Okay. We do that through our Jackson People's Assemblies. Through our assemblies, we use that as a space for residents to vet policy. And when I say residents, I mean it doesn't matter if you're the mayor, or if you are the retired school teacher, or the young person who's 24 and still figuring out what they want to do with their life, right? Like what career or where they want to go with their life. We're all at a table together having conversations about what the priority issues, and then spending 90% of our time together figuring out what the solution is. And so these are our spaces where you have hundreds of residents coming together to engage in a very well-facilitated, participatory process of research and design that is completely solution-driven towards creating a form of co-governance.
All right, thank you. And of course, Reverend Tillard, right? What, like your comments about this? Your mic is still off. Yeah, you just need to turn your.
Okay. So first of all, I don't disagree with anything that's been said, because I think we can. It's not a and or conversation. I've worked with people like A.T. Mitchell and Captain Dennis Muhammad and Erica Ford. And when I was a young man, since I've been a young man, I've been on patrols in Mayfair Mansion Housing Project in DC, and projects in Coney Island and North Philadelphia, Richard Allen projects, with the nation and Black Men Against Crack and so forth and so on. So, yes, all of these solutions are important, along with jobs and education. Larry's very right. Crime has always been with us, and it probably always will. Jesus said, the poor will always be with you. I push back on the notion, though, that poverty is the root of crime, because for every poor criminal, I can show you hundreds and thousands and millions of poor people that don't engage in crime. I'm a lot less sympathetic toward that argument than I was 30 years ago. When I see 5 young people from Newark travel all the way out to East Hampton to a high-end luxury store called Balenciaga, I think that's the name of it. And I think that if we sit here and act as though all of these things will ameliorate crime without dealing with the fact, I don't care whether a person owns a house or lives in public housing projects. If they live in the community and they're committed in the community, they have a right for their children not to be shot through the window. They have a right for their 15-year-olds not to be snatched out of a bodega and hacked to death with machetes. And what's going on in urban cities right now puts all of us at risk. This is not a they, it's not, this is a serious issue. The New York scene is very different because what Larry talked about in terms of the push toward legislation and reform, we've all advocated for that. And again, the legislature in New York was able to do it, was able to actually get a situation where in this state, it is almost very hard to be held on after you've been charged with a crime. There was a man the other day, smeared feces on a woman. They couldn't hold him. He was released. The Brooklyn detectives were there to get him, to hold him on another crime in Brooklyn. Couldn't hold him on that one. So obviously this brother, he does need, obviously mental health issues, but the point I'm making is, yes, we need innovation. Yes, we need reform. But at the same time, we've got to acknowledge we've got a cultural problem. We have a problem in our community, and the people that are committing these crimes, they don't care whether it's Larry Hand, the activist. They don't care if it's the Baraka family. They don't care if it's the Lumumba family. And so when I have these conversations, I also said to the mayor, in addition to what you're talking about, because I don't believe getting guns off the street is a solution, because for every gun you take off, hundreds of guns are flooding in here from down south. We've got a cultural problem. I told him, call a meeting with every activist, every leader, every pastor, every community group, and let us come together, deputize us to go into our communities and talk to young people, figure out what's going on. I know the entertainment industry has a lot to do with it. Why do young people in Newark or young people in Brooklyn or Queens develop this sort of this taste for luxury goods to the point they're willing to jeopardize their lives and future for these things? And my point is, if we're not having those conversations, in addition to, now, a significant part of my career was in the Nation of Islam. And one of the things Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about was personal responsibility and agency. And I'm saying that I wish I could just grab every young brother by the collar and say, now the legislature made it so if you get charged with a crime, you can get out on bail. You can walk free until you go to trial. You will not be discriminated against. You have the same freedom that someone who could post bond. And yet some of our brothers and sisters have used this as a revolving door. So I don't see it as either or. We've got to deal with all of these problems at the same time. And let me just say lastly, it's not just in my city. I can only speak for my community. I can't speak for anybody's. I can't speak for Newark. I can't speak for Jackson. The people are crying out. They're afraid to get on the trains. They're afraid to leave their homes. And the bottom line with politics is the art of the possible. If we lose these cities, if the Republicans win the legislature again in New York, if the right wins a city hall again in New York, as it did under Giuliani and Bloomberg for 20 plus years, then we're not even going to have an opportunity to implement these programs.
I just want to, can I say one thing?
I was going to call on you next. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Because, well, one, I hear you, Brother Conrad, and Reverend Conrad Tiller, and I appreciate you acknowledging that it's not one or the other. The piece that I just wanted to add on is that in formations like people's assemblies, what we're doing is actually making sure that we're targeting the most vulnerable of our communities, the ones that are actually hardest hit by violence and hardest hit by criminalization and all of the isms that we're experiencing. And we're bringing them to the table. And the conversation is about solutions, But engaging in that conversation is actually changing people's mindsets, right? It is actually engaging in that very process that you're talking about around shifting the way people are thinking about how we interact with each other. And a lot of these programs, if we invest more, and I think we all agree that the solution isn't necessarily arresting everybody and locking them up, right? And that we need an immediate solution. But what we often do is forget that it won't take that long to start these solutions quickly, especially not in a place like New York, where you already have a plethora of organizations that, if funded in the same way that the police department is funded, would actually be able to solve a lot more of these problems, right? But they only get a fraction of what the police department is getting. The other piece is that my experience and my opinions and my perspective comes from me being a bi-city person. I not only live here in Jackson where I work, but my most valuable property, my most valuable, person in my life is my son. And he was born in Brooklyn, lives in Brooklyn right now, going to high school. And so I'm there, at least once a month. And I lived there prior to moving back home. So I'm very familiar with what people are saying in community because I'm in community. And I'm in community in some of the hardest hit areas, the most vulnerable areas in Brooklyn, as well as in some of the more affluent areas, right? I have that blessing. And so I do hear what community is saying. And I'm not experiencing all of the same conversation. I don't hear community crying out saying we need more police. That is not what I'm hearing in mass. And I just want to be honest about that. And I do believe that regardless of who we are, that nobody deserves to be unsafe, to live in a place where they feel unsafe. And we sure as hell don't deserve to live in a place where we have to fear threat of bodily harm from not only the people that live around us, but the people that are supposed to protect us. And that's it.
And I was gonna say, in terms of, it seems like you're saying also, if there's cultural component, then the way to deal with that most directly is through direct conversation. Again, whether it be people's assemblies, it seems like what you're saying is, don't just say that. We can't just say it is cultural. It's not like, there's a difference between what you're saying and Conrad was saying and what, say, like, people who say don't listen to drill music or pull up your pants, or right. Like, it seems like what you're talking about is a process, as opposed to simply saying it's a cultural problem. It's more like, yeah, but that's why we need to fully talk about everything.
That's right. We need to not only talk about everything, but we also need to provide resources to do more, right? So, for example, when I'm looking at a credible messenger program, for example, that credible messenger program has a curriculum. Like, I'll give the CM3 program, which is a national model, credible messenger, developed by New York's own Director Clinton Lacey, and it's throughout the nation. They use a covenant of peace model. And this covenant of peace curriculum model literally is a process by which they're taking young people between the ages of 13 and 26 through a leadership development process that has them like truly engage in like some self-awareness, right? So it tackles their emotional well-being, and then tackles their decision-making process, and connects that to their emotional well-being and the conditions that they're in. It has them begin to analyze those things, to look a little deeper into what does it mean to actually make decisions that are better for your existence long term. It also then has them go through a process where they're determining how they should engage with other people. It has them begin to question some of their past actions, and in terms of, what are those actions and how were they harmful, and how do I now move in a way where I am accountable to my community in a better way, and to my family and to myself, right? And so it's, when we're talking about these programs that that are alternatives to detention and incarceration and to policing, these are programs that actually have a core component of their job is to shift people's mindsets. Like that is the biggest component of it.
Putting community in the center of the conversation. That's right.
And
I
it seems like
certainly have no problem with that, but let me tell you something. There's a brother that just was recently killed in Harlem by the name of Alpo Martinez. And when Alpo was 17, 18, 19 years old, he and two of his friends became the people who largely popularized and instituted crack in Harlem. He went to DC, and in DC, Bella went to my high school, Wayne Perry. They connected, killed about 20 people. Alpo, including women, shooting people in the face, etc. Alpo turned state's evidence against Wayne. Wayne got 5, 6 life sentences. Alpo served 30 years. He came out of prison, was in the witness protection program, had a fresh start. I met him, worked with him, talked with him about the past, what he had done, what he was involved in, the hurt, the pain, etc., the victims. And he was recently killed in Harlem. And as he was going, after he had been shot in trying to control his vehicle, he was throwing reportedly heroin packages out of the vehicle. So that means he had returned to crime. Now, as a 50-some-odd-year-old man, having gone through this process, having seen everything that had happened, and all I'm simply saying is, I am for community-based programs, but let us be clear that every community has a criminal element. And if we're saying we need to reinvest and do these things, that's fine. I mean, I have been involved in this as much as anyone, and that's important. But we also have to understand that our people's lives are in danger because some people choose profit. Some people choose material things over the lives of human beings. And so, that's the job of law enforcement. That's what they do. And as long as they do that job appropriately, fairly, if they're held responsible, if they violate the law and what they're supposed to do, and they're punished. Eric Adams said one of the reasons why he will bring back this anti-crime unit is because he protested, and I was there with him, the parts of the original programs that were not right. And so my point is, yes, we can all talk about these solutions, and they're important, but we also must recognize that every community has a criminal element, and they're not likely. You can talk to them, you can send them through diversion programs. The mafia has been in existence since the beginning of the immigrants coming to this country, and it goes back to the old country. So there's a criminal element that exists in all communities, and law enforcement is presumably and in its best and important role to protect citizens from that element. And
so to get you, just to get this clear, just even in terms of even in a response to it is, there are certain people who we shouldn't try to save, that need to be thrown away, that need to be locked up, that need to be taken out of the community.
Well, I didn't say that they shouldn't be saved, but they're clearly people that have to be incarcerated. I mean, and we're not going to play that game on here because everybody here knows that that's the case. Right, and we're not conceding, we're not giving up the legitimacy of reform. We're not giving up the legitimacy of diversion programs or working with youth and all of that by admitting the obvious. Because if we don't admit the obvious, then we're not being realistic, but we're not serving our people.
But is the question, and this could be something for Larry or Kia, or you, right? Like, are we talking about is it the framing of the conversation? Are you talking about just the exception, and is the problem that we think this is the rule? Like you're bringing up, like, yeah, there's some people who are evil, right? We need to keep in mind that some people are evil, some people who need to be taken out of society. But the question is that how they see our community in general, or are we talking about the exceptions? And what does it mean to look at the exceptions in that way? Larry, you're on mute.
I'm muted, Dingle. Yeah.
Well, they do see our community that way.
When you say that way, what way? What way are you talking about?
Well, they see us, our whole people, as a criminal people. That's the way many in law enforcement look at us. There's much of what Reverend Tillett has said that I actually agree with. I actually agree that, first of all, crime is a multi-dimensional problem. It's not going to be solved with a single solution. It's going to be a multi-dimensional solution for a multi-dimensional problem. And I also agree with Reverend Tillett that part of the crime problem is a cultural problem that will require cultural solutions. And I also agree with him, because I come out of the community, that there is a criminal element, and there are hardened criminals, and probably prison is the best place for them. But here's the problem. First of all, the relation between poverty and crime is a well-established sociological relationship. This is beyond debate now. Mm-hmm. And this question was even dealt with by Dr. Du Bois. Remember, Du Bois wrote Black Reconstruction. Mm-hmm. And in Black Reconstruction, he was discussing the challenges that the newly emancipated people had. Because essentially, when we were emancipated, as Frederick Douglass said, we were free to starve because they just let us go. And then they created what a sociologist would call a criminogenic situation. They created a whole set of laws that Black people could not help but break. Mm-hmm. Because we were essentially refugees coming out of the South. We were internal refugees, vagabondage. Can't more than 3 gather on a corner. Mm-hmm. Can't be in town after sun, a whole set of laws. Mm-hmm. And then what did they do? They retooled the criminal justice system after passing the 13th Amendment, which was to abolish slavery. But remember, the Southern Congress people helped that amendment couldn't have been passed without the provision abolish slavery except for those who had committed a crime. So what did they do? They retooled the situation so that, yes, we were free, but we would soon break laws. We would be in prison, and then our labor would be leased out, just like we were in slavery. That's where the convict lease labor system, wait, let me finish. That's where the convict lease labor system came from. Then Du Bois writes The Philadelphia Negro in 1898, documenting how, in fact, Black people had come into Philadelphia. And one of the challenges was because they were poor, there was significant crime in the community. And then the Black sociologist St. Clair Drake writes Black Metropolis in the 1940s during World War II, documenting the problems of crime, crime and drugs in the Chicago Black community. And then Dr. Clark writes Dark Ghetto in the 1960s. And here we are in the 21st century. So, I remember talking to Alombe, right? Alombe Brath from the Patrice Lumumba Coalition. He said to me, Ademo, he said, we could decrease the crime problem in Harlem probably by 50% if we could stop the flow of illegal drugs and weapons into our community. But they're not stopping them. They actually cut back funds. The government cut back funds for drug and gun interdiction between states. The point that I'm making is, yes, we can do things to manage crime. we could bring it down a few degrees, in one, at one time, but it's not going to be eliminated until you eliminate the basis of it. And the reason we have so much crime in America is we got so much poverty. You can't close your eyes to that.
Well,
it's gonna be like that until we die, unless we change the system. We got to change the system. That's why we need jobs at a living wage and not a minimum wage. You can't pay rent nowhere. I would steal if I had a job paying $7.25. You can't pay rent for a 1-bedroom apartment anywhere in America on $7.25. Dr. King said we needed living wage. We need to make enough money to support ourselves and our family. We need a guaranteed income. You don't even have to have socialism to have those things. Other capitalist countries have them, and they have lower rates of crime than we do.
Well, let me just say this. I don't disagree with what you're saying. However, as Karanga said, and I'm channeling the cultural nationalist in me. When you say they, yes, it's hard to make it on the wages that people are being paid, but it's a miracle, and really not a miracle. It speaks to the character of our people that millions of our people do not steal. And let me just say this. The poverty that Du Bois talked about, the poverty that early sociologists talked about, that's one thing. You're right. People who are hungry, they're going to steal food. But and again, I'm glad you alluded to this, because I dealt with this issue 20 years ago with a movement for change. Young people today have bought into a value system that it not only rejects the religious education and value system that we received and older folks in our community received, but it also rejects the Black consciousness value system. It rejects Black nationalism. It rejects socialism. It is ultimately a very hyper form of capitalism. And when you steal and you send 80 young people go into a store and steal luxury bags, that's not poverty. That's a poverty of the spirit. That's a poverty of ethics. That's a poverty of values. That's following the crowd. That's imitating rap videos and trying to be like celebrities. And so I think the message that we need to be telling our young people is that you can do that, but the same system that is here to put people in jail, it will put you in jail for committing those crimes. And so I'm not saying I disagree with anything you said. The fact of the matter is we don't live in a socialist system. We live in a capitalist system. That's where we are now. If we go to a socialist system, as we move toward that, there's more movement toward that than ever in this country. But the fact remains that we've prospered in this country and made it with a certain sense of values. And we're getting away from that, Larry. You know that. You know that.
And I know that I know we're running out of time. I just want to give Rakia the final say before we go, because before we move on. But we always love these conversations. This was a particularly really good conversation. I wanted to jump into education and all the other stuff, but this was really, really, really good. But I want to give Rakia the last say as we quickly close this section out.
All right. Yeah, I really appreciate both Brother Ham and Brother Reverend Tillard and you all for this. My last words is that police do not prevent crime. Police respond to crime. That what is the harm? Because we're already experiencing the worst of violence. So what is the harm of trying a new intervention, right? Investing more dollars in new interventions, and that is through funding our communities to get to the root causes of what's causing it, and to do that very work that Reverend Tillard is talking about around really prioritizing values, morals, and ethics, and teaching something new, right? And righting the wrong of a capitalistic system, as Brother Ham is talking about. So I think we need to really invest in something new and stop putting more and more money into a solution that has yet to prove a problem solver. So
well, thank you so much. This was a really great conversation, right? Like, and we're going to continue. We're going to have more. I know that we normally we go from 7 to 8. Is 7 is 8:20
That's right.
now. So we need to. We definitely have to move on to our next segment. But we appreciate all of you for coming out. I appreciate you, Chairman Ham, for coming out. For unexpectedly, but being here, appreciate it. Appreciate you, Conrad Tiller, for coming on. Appreciate you, Rakia Namumba, for coming on. This was a really good conversation, and thank you. All right,
as we transition, I don't know if I didn't really get a chance really to say it, but on the matter of the vote, hosting the Million Voter March on April 4th, the anniversary of Dr. King's assassination, right? Because it was a whole question of trying to preserve what's left of the vote as we got to deal with. So coming weeks we're going to be dealing with that, right? So right on to that we had that extended stay with a ding. Right on. Trying to preserve what's left of the vote.
All right. So thank you. Appreciate having all of you on. Purple Haze. We're getting ready to go to our next segment.
Yeah, I gotta say what's up to Brother Ham and Brother Zayid. What's going on?
I ain't seen you so long. I ain't even recognize you for a minute.
That's all right.
Oh, that's Purple Haze.
That's me.
That's how I was. She's rocking it out, man. Yeah, she's rocking it out. Yeah, let's get it.
Forever the pop poet. Forever the pop poet. I thank y'all. This is a perfect way to come in. Still listening and learning from these brothers right here. I always will. Continue to extend and be on purpose with this word and with this mission. Much respect, much love. Thank you. I'm glad we're here.
I'm glad too. So DJ Rhino has been talking about you for a long time. And we are very, very honored to have you on today. We're going to have DJ Rhino make the proper introduction to Purple Haze, a person I know that you deeply, deeply respect, somebody who is a highly talented, very, very well-respected figure. So DJ Rhino, best DJ in the universe, talk to us.
Peace. Y'all can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
All right. This is a sister I've known for some time now. We started off doing music together, working on music projects and stuff together. And then the friendship and the relationship just kind of took off from there. You know what I mean? She's doing mad things, man. I mean, the sister's mad creative, number one. She's mad creative, mad talented, man. But she's a strong sister, man. I've seen her work with kids of various ages. You know what I'm saying? Trying to teach them the culture of hip hop and things like that, man. And she really has her own unique style and her own way of getting that across. You know what I'm saying? And getting the kids engaged and getting them involved. My daughter was part of a program that she was heading off. So, but one thing, Purple Haze, this is one thing that I was thinking about just a couple of days ago. When do you remember when you and I first met? Because I don't remember when we actually met. Like, how did we actually meet? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a guess, right? I was thinking the same thing preparing it. First of all, thank you, family. It is beautiful to be here. I'm really glad that All Politics Are Local continues to be a sustainable program with real conversation, with people that are clear about power and purpose. And thank you, Rhino, for having me here. Thank you, Jonathan, as well, and all of those that are making this happen. CMZ, I believe it was either the National Political Hip Hop Convention. It was. I was trying to figure out if it was there, which was at Metropolitan Baptist Church, which at that time I was a member of, or it was NJPAC's International Hip Hop Festival. I think it might have been that one. And the other place I said possibly was the African Globe Theater.
Okay. See, and and all three of them sound right. You know what I mean? That's what's crazy.
That's
All
going
three of them
back.
sound
Yes.
right. Yeah. It's so crazy. But I know, we ended up linking up. Again, we did some music together. I know there were some producers from France that were doing a project, and we were helping them out with the project, and we were trying to grab a bunch of different artists, local artists that were doing stuff, and trying to put them on these tracks that these French producers had.
DJ Just Dizzy.
Yeah, and then DJ Just Dizzle ended up being a part of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was big. That was big. But tell us a little bit about yourself before I start going into some real questions with you.
Okay, listen, I am a beautiful, proud daughter of Jerry. I am a granddaughter of Adam and Mamie and Myrtle and Yuzi. I am originally a brown girl from the Bronx, New York, been adopted by Newark, Brick City. I'm a graduate of Johnson C. Smith University, really proud HBCU alum. I appreciate my time in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I've been back in the brick since 2000, man. I am lyrically known as Purple Haze. I am a hip hop director, design and direct hip hop education programs on purpose. I am and forever will be an artist. That's why I'm lyrically known as Purple Haze for the rest of my life. I am an MC, and I'm an advocate, a youth advocate, an advocate for celebrating women and girls, and an advocate for the city of Newark. I am also a U.S. Next Level Hip Hop Ambassador. I appreciate my teacher, Tony Blackman, the first to come out and do that before the program was even created many years ago. And yeah, man, so hip hop is my way of life. I started out as a young B girl and did some graph like everybody else was doing, a little bit on my jeans, a little bit on a hat, lots of it on a notebook. And and
let me ask you real quick. What was it that opened you up to hip hop? Like, how did you get into hip hop?
What got you flowing, girl?
How did that connection happen? You and hip hop, like.
Yeah, I was born in a divine year, 1979, right? When Sugar Hill Gang released their joint, and I have two older brothers. My oldest brother is 9 years older than me, so hip hop came to my house. This is what he was doing. He would do every aspect of hip hop. And because I was in the Bronx at that time in the 80s, it was everywhere, when I stepped outside. So I really don't even know when it wasn't happening in my life. That's what I mean. Right. Riding the trains to school and the buses and everything, different artists, Nice and Smooth lived up the block, or Showbiz and AG was from my grandmother's project. Run DMC and them was at Corona Park. My mom's is from Queens, a really big family. My aunt went to school with LL Cool J, they salt pepper around the way. So I just grew up. And these were people that were making the music, and yes, these were people that were public figures, but you literally would be passing, right? Like, I'm on the Bronx 41 bus on my way home from school, and KRS-One was shooting my philosophy video. So it's just been the way I've seen people gather. I will say, as a young person, I was quiet. I was not into speaking. And I watched and I observed and I listened, and I was fortunately respectful of elders and centered. So I was able to stay in the room with the elders, listening to them, and they would see me. And I have to say, the cipher is what brought me into hip hop. So all of those things that I'm saying existed in my world in a very personal, intimate way. And then outside in the community was the cipher. And so my pops, he always had us in the arts. He always had us out at listening to people speaking, going to jazz in the parks, going to different parks and activities and after school programs. And so we walked in, we seen our people gathering. He went to the cipher. He would put me on his shoulders so I could see what's up. And when he would let me down, or he'd tell me, go ahead, go up front, right? Not growing up with someone feeling like I have to stand on that side, and that that last conversation got me they got me thinking of all of the things. But shout out to my pops Jerry. But I'm fortunate to have parents that encourage me to go out, to go in, that trusted our community. My father always taught me never be scared of your own people. So when he seen the cipher, even though I was little, right, only way I could see is either up on his shoulder. He said, go up there, go up there, go up there to look and see in the cipher, because the way we organize it, for those who don't know, that's a collective experience and a collective movement, the oneness center, right? So going up there to look, those who were in the cipher would see me watching their feet. They would see me studying. And I was taking notes. I'd go back in the house and practice and impress my brother, right? But I was called into the cipher often by elders. My dad, my mom said when I was 2 years old, if a car stopped at the light, my hands would go up in the air and I just start dancing. So the movement is what brought me into hip hop. And those ciphers, man, that's a good place. That's a good caretaker. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. I was raised by the village with 4 parents and still raised by the village. So it was the cipher, man, and listening and looking and really dancing and allowing myself to surrender to the rhythm and to the moment and being taught, right? They would teach me steps and then I would go ahead and do it some more and just be out of, just be synchronized and aligned in such a way, because that cipher with all of that concentrated energy, it elevates you to do things beyond what you imagine, right? It taps into another aspect of your multi-dimensional self and your consciousness. And so I was doing things in the cipher that was impressive for my age. And so I always felt good amongst my community and taken care of. And then, I was in 7th or 8th grade. Like I said, I wasn't one to talk much, but I was writing rhymes a little bit. I took my brother, Joe, he was known as Gio at that time. I took him, Roxanne Shante, and MC Light's rhymes, and I rearranged them and changed them, like a little bit of a parody. And I do think it is Roxanne Shante. Seeing her on Video Music Box at her age was a really important visual representation and demonstration of a young Black girl rocking. I think MC Light as well. And so seeing them, that's likely why I took my iconic brother at home, who was a superstar for me, and then these 2 women, and I rearranged their rhymes, and I put some lines in it like mine. I changed the words, and I went and told my best friend at recess. And she said, yo, I ain't know you could rap. And she said, hold on, do it again. And she went and got some more people. And then they was around me. And they said, do it again. And before you know it, everybody's around me at recess, and I'm saying this rhyme. And what happened in that moment is I discovered my own voice. I felt good. And that shyness, that game of invisibility and silence that I was playing, it ended that day. I liked the way it felt to hear and feel my voice, and I could be seen while I was using my voice. That is
how old were you then when that happened for you?
I was 11. I was 11 years old. And I was at East Harlem Performing Arts. I was actually behind the scenes, always making sure the show happened. Right? That's how technically out of the spotlight I was. I loved the show. I loved performance. I wanted to make sure people could watch it. So I was a stagehand all of the time. I was never one to put myself up in center. But it was the discovery of the voice, which really led to, it was the collective intention of my father, because he taught me by age 4, he taught us how to think for ourselves so that we would not go to school systems and be taught how to think, that we could decipher information. So I grew up, my pops used to go to Garveyite meetings. You know, a lot of people don't know that publicly. And so I was taught and raised in a way. And my elementary school that I went to, Yelverton, it was created by a Black militant female. So we would do, we did Lift Every Voice and sing every day at the top of school. We had to say the creed of the school. No fighting, no cursing. Yeah, I could say it. We all had to stand straight and disciplined, right? And I was a cadet at a church. And so I think all of this exposure, going to different lectures and intentional reading and a lot of discipline at home and intentionality, and the community seeing me, telling me I was special, telling me I was gifted, and taking care of me in that way. To me, all of that led up to understanding that the power that I knew was in me, because I had knowledge of self, that now the voice was my discovery of my gift to myself in the world, and that I had discipline to use it responsibly and intentionally. And then after that, it became a love and a curiosity around words, writing, and speaking, because I was terrified when it came to reading out loud. I used to study. You would think I couldn't read. I was so terrified of my own voice. and being seen and heard. So that transformation is what altered my life, and I got on purpose.
See, now look at how powerful that is, or what hip hop did for you.
Great
Because
story.
I'm gonna tell you, what it did for the shy, the quiet, the introvert. Like that, I was a quiet one too. That was the same. That was everything you just described. That was me. You know what I mean? I was real quiet into myself. You know what I'm saying? Plus, I was an only child. You know what I mean? And hip hop just brought out so much. You know what I'm saying? It just brought out so much.
I mean, when I tell you time and space, man, I didn't like school. My MO was like, do it well and get out. You know? So, but I
didn't even do it well, but I got out.
Well, my prize wasn't playing with me, man. The consequences too much. So, but the beautiful thing is that train ride to school. By then, when I was taking the train from the Bronx to Harlem, I went to East Harlem Performing Arts, and the most exciting thing about the train ride for me was seeing the pieces, seeing the graph pieces. And then that's when the train arrives, right? I want to see what's next. And then when you get inside the train, and I know New York City, it cost them a lot of money to take art and music out of schools. You know, that's a part of what happened. Right. What happened in the 70s, right? So me in the early 80s riding the train, I'm sitting there decoding the wild style. Mm-hmm. It's the code. It was beautiful to me. That was the newspaper. You know, right. That didn't look ugly to me. I liked it.
Nah, it was art. Yeah. And this was during the time where everybody was complaining about the graffiti in New York City. Because I'm originally from New York as well.
Right.
And I remember, man, like, that was like a big thing, man. Like everybody
was the 80s, the awful 80s.
Yeah, man, the 80s, man. And this, we talking about old bankrupt New York, old dirty bankrupt New York. You know what I'm saying?
What else?
That graffiti, man, was colorful, especially when you saw the pieces on the side of the trains pull up. Man, that was everything, man. We used to sit, me and my friends used to sit in the train station waiting for those trains to pull up just so we could see those pieces.
Yep. We used to take the long way home. Yep. We used to let trains pass. You just see another piece. And Charles Zone was my favorite because he used to make this baby. And the baby would always be doing the different things. Yeah. And something about the innocence and the fun, of the baby I was gravitating to. But otherwise, what else was my eyes going to gaze on?
Right.
What did our environment look like?
Right.
Right? I'm going to see somebody basing. I'm going to see somebody shaking. You know what I mean? I'm going to see somebody fight. It shifted. Right, I probably altered my reality, and that's what I like about hip hop. It's the combination of reality and imagination, and that's what I remind young people. Where are we focusing our gaze, and what do you imagine, and what is real?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And what would you say was the first? Because you're pure hip hop, so I know you kind of touched all the elements. What would you say was the first element that grabbed you in hip hop? Was it the words?
Nah, for me it was breaking.
Breaking.
It was breaking. Yep. It was breaking. I probably should say the music, right? Because the music incorporated the words, the storytelling, and the storytelling. I would see the images. My imagination was totally creating my own picture show, and the sound and the frequency. I liked flipping through my dad's albums, every day. That was part of my routine, just flipping through his albums, looking at those album covers, and listening to music. And so the familiarity of the 60s and 70s music that he was playing being sampled, right? So that was resonating in me. But when it came to like a conscious choice, it was breaking. It was breaking. It was amazing to do those things on cardboard. Like I literally used to get it in and spin on my head and all that stuff. And I can't explain to people how, right? Yeah. It's a practice, but there's also the surrender. And I'm right now, I'm in grad school and I'm studying the consciousness in and of hip hop. And I'm learning more about consciousness intentionally. And I'm looking more at Eastern philosophy around consciousness. And so when it comes to body, memory, and motion and the science of what happens when we are spinning at the same time when we surrender. I use the word surrender a lot because there's just an allowing ourselves and a free motion. And it's a very interesting phenomenon of how breakers, right, from someone that started out as a B-girls, how did I do that? That's kind of why I'm studying what I'm studying in school. I want to know how it happened, right? So there's momentum in the motion, but there's also this freedom. In order to do it, there's a fearlessness. There's a fearlessness, and so we get taken away. But it's also the boom back. It's the beat that we're synchronized to, right? And that rhythm and that freedom has us be spectacular. And yes, I practiced, but the amount of time don't equal to me the result. But I know excitement, pure energy is a phenomenal outcome, creates a phenomenal outcome. That's what I'm learning about consciousness.
Wow. So tell me, how did you come up with the name Purple Haze, and how old were you when you came up with Purple Haze?
Great question. So when I was breaking, I was Special K. When I was tag, I was K Love. I loved hearts. And then I was Big Kid. When I started rapping, I was Big Kid, the BIGGKIDD. And Left Eye was a huge, huge influencer on me. Lisa Left Eye Lopez from TLC, loved the group. I loved Left Eye's approach to rhythm, to pattern changes throughout her lyrics. And so my cousins and I used to, dance in the living room for the family, and we used to play the songs and be different characters, right? And if we was playing Salt and Pepper, I'd be Spinderella. And if we was playing TLC, I'm Left Eye. And so my aunt, they noticed how open I became when I'd be doing those things. And my aunt spoke to me about a friend of hers who was a music producer in New Jersey. And I had just moved to Jersey. My family had just moved to Newark. And I got offered, business deals. And I said, nah, I got to go to college. Right? Nobody in my family finished college, and my mother wanted her children to graduate. So I went to college, and then I got offered a deal down there. And what I took from the conversation, I didn't sign a deal. And I went to college when I was really young. So I needed parents' permission anyway. But I didn't sign a deal. But what I did take away is they told me to name Big Kid. They had to change it because what happens when I get older? And I said, because everybody used to call me a kid since I was always the youngest. So I would say, no, I'm big though. I'm wise. In my mind, I would say that. So I said, yeah, they right. So I had posters of Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley on my wall in my apartment in college. My dad stopped by. He said, yo, I didn't know you was into this. He didn't know this aspect of me. And he said, Purple Haze. And it's just the way that resonated. So after I graduated from college, I came back home, got a job, and paused on all of the music. But it was a part of me that wasn't fulfilled because I wasn't living authentically in that expression. I was enjoying the culture, but I was not in my gift and my contribution. So when I sat down and I said, yo, I need a name. I said, I need a name. And I was deep in prayer and meditation. And I heard my father's voice. And it said, Purple Haze. And I remember thinking like, no, why? But I definitely, as a person that continues to grow and learn faith and trust spirit, I know when I hear spirit, I know the difference between, or I try to distinguish the difference between ego and spirit. And so I knew that was spirit offering me something, and I didn't understand it, but I could trust it and follow. And thank goodness I did. I came to understand the color purple and how symbolic it is, and like hue of indigo. And when meditating, and you see purple, you're reaching a high consciousness. When it turns from day to night and night to day, there's always a purple haze in the sky. And of course, Jimmy, that song, when I hear that joint, it's like, ooh, some conditional response type thing when I hear that. And Jimmy was great. Jimmy represented greatness.
Yeah, I got Jimmy on my walls. Yep.
Yeah, I got Jimmy over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to be great, or I am great, and I want to keep reminding myself to discover, and sometimes it's just a reminder. But when I started understanding purple being red and blue, it got a little deeper for me. I was like, I want Bloods and Crips to get along. I want Democrats and Republicans to have their beliefs, but not destroy and be divided the way we are. So then I came to understand purple is a unifier. And it's really a reminder. Purple is my code word for peace.
I'm loving that. I'm loving that. Purple is always also very regal in that in traditional African circles. It represents reality.
Beautiful. How many churches have purple? I mean, I started seeing the color. Prior to the name, it was just my cousin's favorite color. My cousin Tiffany, her favorite color always been purple. I never wore purple, seen purple, didn't care about purple. The way I see this color around in life, it's a really beautiful color. And interesting, with the name Shakir, the given name Shakir, which is Arabic origin. The name Shakir, I came to learn later on in my 30s, it means leader with much gratitude. And I didn't know that most of my life. Now, when I would say my name is Shakir, people go, huh? Mess it up, mispronounce it. And honestly, when I moved to Jersey, I cut it in half and I started calling myself Kia and telling everybody, call me Kia, telling teachers, call me Kia. Same thing in college. When I got back, I had to get with me. And the dessert club, I joined the dessert club. I was with Brother Ham and Pop and learning about Newark and coming to myself again, you know, really pulling up those roots of my father's teaching. And I noticed when I said purple, first of all, I love hearing people say it, not because of me. I love the P, the way you must say that hard P, right? Like powered. It popped for me.
Muscularity of language. Keep talking, daughter. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so when I would say my name is Shakir, right? And my middle name is Shaniqua. And so when comedians and people would refer to girls who were ghetto, they would make reference to those names, not realizing those are 70s names, right? And I were claiming our heritage, right? And so I felt shame about my name at different points. Now, when I introduced myself as Purple, y'all, people's shoulders drop, their chest opens up, they smile, and they lighten up. So it's really saying peace. It's offering peace. It's so wow. It's such an interesting journey.
That's very, 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 very true. You know, the color and the word, because when you say the word, you envision the color when you say the word, and it all comes together. That's mad true.
Yo, Rhino, I don't know if we talked about it, but trying to rhyme the word purple.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know the certain words in English, because now I keep studying words. I keep listening and learning words. I'm going to forever learn words, especially the simplest ones. Bell Hooks said, you know, being intelligent and speaking intelligent is just making sure people understand what you say, right? Right. It's so, and I know people use language in weird ways to exclude individuals from conversation to keep information in. So I'm learning words forever. But the word purple, like, what word around with purple?
I would say circle. something with the same sound, you know, because I'm a lyricist too. So I would look for a word that would have the same sound and syllables, and or two words, a combination of words that will come up with, you know.
You're a teacher. You already know that. That's what I tell the students. Is
right. Remember when Eminem was he was talking about rhyming the word orange, and, you know, trying to come up with something that would rhyme with orange.
Yeah, that's the other one. We were looking to rhyme words. Sometimes we look to rhyme words, right? But what are words? They're made up of letters. They're sounds. So I love working with young people, especially those who were like me, that had an aversion of speaking or an aversion of writing. Watching young people, when you say it's time to write, ooh, you know, nervous and all of that because of their experiences in tomato system. But it's like, again, that purple, right? And I would say, you know, you've been hazed. You know, we could bring an ease to the experience of how you enter. And so sound resonates well with us, right? From our people, our oral history being passed through talking. So it's like, yo, don't rhyme words only. Play that game. Rhyme sounds.
Rhyme sounds. That's it.
Rhyme sounds. So purple, I heard you. You know?
I just want to jump in just for a second because there's so much. Zayid brought this up. You are a hip hop educator. You were getting your PhD in hip hop, right? Like you're getting.
I'm in a master's program, but yeah.
Okay, you're getting a master's program. You're doing graduate level work. You're a graduate level. You were a teacher. You're a hip hop educator.
Yes.
You're doing graduate level teaching in hip hop, and you engage in international diplomacy.
Yes.
As in, the State Department calls on you.
Yes.
To engage with India and Taiwan in what are traditionally, they call it like, cultural diplomacy. They use it with jazz artists, etc. To try to look at culturally what is the United States like. So you actually represent the culture for the United States government, State Department.
Yes.
I wanted to throw that out. You could talk about any aspect of that you want. I just thought that those were really interesting things, and I wanted to throw it out before I just, went back in the background.
And I'm gonna add to that. I want to deal with the piece of conflict transformation in the work, right?
Yes.
Because see, that's the story that's up underneath this that I definitely do not want folks to get lost on, because I done spent the last 20 years in the streets of Newark trying to keep kids from killing each other. You know, and got the bullet holes in my body to prove it, right? But that's this big, and we haven't had a session on the show with this kind of length on the question of the culture of hip hop and its value, right? And how it can actually help us live better, right? So I wanted you to jump on some of that from that end.
Conflict resolution, conflict transformation. This is good because this year, the diplomacy program and our training, our next level training, a majority of our training was conflict transformation, and I love it. As you're saying, this is wow. I'm literally just seeing a visual, right, of the 70s and 80s. Conflict with the environment. Hip hop is transforming that. Conflict around lack. Conflict with yourself, with your thoughts, with your choices and beliefs. Conflict within family, right? A song being used by one generation and a song being used by another generation. We extend the life of the song. Then we can all gather to the beat and the rhythm with different story on it, with different language and words, reflecting their times and reflecting their conflict. You can listen to lyrics, read lyrics through time, like any other history, and tells you about the conflict of the people. Conflict transformation, that's why breaking is so important, using different martial arts, what was happening in the 70s with martial arts. And so breakdancing, yes, gymnastics. I love Lauryn Hill's line, flipping in the ghetto on a dirty mattress, right? The self-taught aspect of hip hop is so important. And resolving not having resources, therefore being a source. Sourcing yourself and in a collective, right? Bambaataa, and I love the movie The Wanderers and Warriors, those movies in the 70s, right? But that meeting, bringing folks together after a gentleman who represented peace was killed. And that was something that everyone, or not everyone, but many agreed, taking that person out of bounds, right? You got different gangs, but in agreement there. So Bambaataa and them bringing the group together, those who brought the groups together to dialogue. That's wild, right? In the motion, it was beef. But sitting down in circle formation, just like the sun, right? The circle is our source, and talking story like we've been. And so that's how the conflict and transformation happen. The young people, hip hop has always been a voice of the young people. So it does expose when we're in conflict with younger people. My man Cool V, we work together. Cool V is Rhino, you gotta have Cool V on the show, man. Cool V,
definitely. Shout out to Cool V.
So he's such an important teacher in my life, and God, just through dialogue, right? Because his knowledge of self, it's how he lived. It's nothing separate. Yeah. And so he says, don't judge their music because it would create separation. And we don't want separation from young people. If we don't have relationship with them, we can't teach and exchange. It was such an important thing that he explained to me, right? He's like, remember, this thing is about respect. We don't agree. We can respect. So it becomes very deeper. It becomes a deeper ask of us in our generational time. Now, I don't think I need to emulate what a young person is doing because I'm of my age and my stage and phase in life. But I can represent myself
that
and
represents.
be
That's
in
right.
relationship with them and recognize, like my grandmother, I'm sure the music she was listening to when she was a teenager, her grandmother ain't like that, right? So that's everybody's generational time to not and be in agreement, and to it's important to remember that it's reflecting the times, that they're using it to translate their negotiation and conflict of where they are in their journey. Or, and it's both ways, in conflict so you can elevate by telling the truth about it, right? Being authentic always works, doesn't matter.
That's right.
Authenticity always preserves life, always inspires and elevates. And so the authenticity of failure, the authenticity around pain. Dr. Cornell West, one of my homies asked him a question. Say, what's going on with these kids? Young people raising up at us as women on a train one day. Yeah, this is out of hand. This is nervous, right? And I think I learned, maybe it was the million. I went down the millions more movement with Brother Hammond Pop. Million Family March went down there, right? And the power, when Erykah Badu got on stage, everybody was quiet. Everybody was quiet. Power don't take force. She used more silence, and she didn't sing her song. The power of silence and being with. And then the honesty and the truth telling about when we came. And so I hear that in the lyrics. But I also heard the death culture. And I said, something going on. I mean, the industry is the industry, right? They mass produce.
Yeah.
All right. And take aspects from culture and mass produce. So it has a different intention. Now, what I heard a lot of being mass produced was death culture. I said, something my pops and I talked about is how we don't honor grief. What is our ritual of grief in this country as a people? What I do see, and I love in hip hop, and I did an interesting project with young people, it's Inspired, right? Because the beautiful thing about working with young people is you get to be a part of their journey. The thing you have to remember in being a responsible adult is you're a part of their journey. You don't project yours on them.
That's right.
You don't hold on to them. They have to live their life. You have to be there no matter where they go, touching point. They got to know that you always will love them.
That's right.
You may not agree with them. You will always love them. And then that love keeps the connection there. So you don't want them to turn away in shame and run from you, right? You want them to know you always got safe space in my mind, in my heart. And so watching the memorial, what I say in hip hop, we do have grief ritual. The burning of the candles, to pour out a little liquor, like Tupac said, which is our version of libation, because we always recreating things, right? The wearing the bandanas with the names, the t-shirts, the face, memorialized, right? So I said, that's the ritual, and the getting together, way we get together, even the shooting, right? And somebody died shooting up in the air, right? And I don't know if they know that part, right? It's like, don't shoot each other, the retaliation.
Right. It's a salutation.
But check this out. What difference is that than the 21 gun salute the military do?
Exactly.
And where they got the 21 gun salute? Where they got the 21 gun salute? How many bullets did it take for Napoleon's army to take the nose off of the great monuments and Kemet? Right? So these numbers and these things are interesting. So we got to pay attention to numbers, right? And use our cultural pastime information and keep coming back to our birthright. And when we don't love each other in a radical way, is what I see. So what I had young people do, we did this project.
We're gonna bite on that.
Yeah. This is deep work. What it take around self-forgiveness to love somebody you upset with. or to see yourself, to see life as a full-length mirror. What are they showing me about myself? Where are they're exposing a wound of mine. They're showing me that do I forgive and have compassion for my inner child? This thing is done. Because my generation or hip hop, to me, we're cycle breakers. For the expression that our people did not have by having to be appropriate and conforming, I think it all became spontaneous combustion and blew up. Or 360 circled, right? Because if you look at how we dance, how we shake, our colors, our amplification of our voices, we're technically very inappropriate to generations prior to us. And they still feel shame about it. So as a hip hop educator, I can tell you there's a lot of barriers because our people are still our disconnect in generations. That's not just only in hip hop, right? It's reflective of our journey around self-hate. But the understanding we got to express ourselves very different than our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. We let out the collective pain and the collective joy and celebration, the extreme and polarities of that thing. So I had some students do a headshot, take a photo of themselves, and then go over to Newark print shop when it was there in the Haynes building and screen print that photo of themselves. And I said, because you got to rock yourself. I said, who's always on a t-shirt? Famous people or dead people? And now, do you love you enough to wear yourself, to wear who you are?
That's deep.
It was very powerful. We had one brother. Oh, I will never forget this king. He's such a dope king. Zay Jigadoo. It's certain little kids in Newark. I can't wait to see them and meet them again. I can't wait to see how they adapt. Right? So this young man, he said, Purple, I look dead. I said, you don't look dead. You just used to seeing dead people on the shirt. Look again.
Wow.
I said, but that's why you on that shirt. Right? Because you got to choose that path. You got to choose to live every day when the streets
show life.
Yep.
You got to choose. That's a conflict. When your friends say this and you know that, are you going to be yourself? Are you going to be yourself?
Now I know we're starting to end. We're starting to get toward that time, or a little past that time. But we're so happy to have you as a
Great
guest.
show, great session, great
We're
cipher.
gonna have to have you back, Purple. We're gonna have to have you back because you said so much.
Right, and
like even
DJ Rhino,
when we were talking about transfer of time and stuff, you even broke down the purpose of sampling in hip hop. You know what I mean? How sampling goes through the generations. You know what I'm saying? And it brings families, it brings people, the generations together. It closes that gap in time. You said so much in that. We definitely got to have
you in grad school. You'd be teaching. You should be teaching grad school in hip hop. People should have to go through you to get their doctorates. That will happen in time. But DJ, I know you want to ask something else.
Well, I'm going to get to that, but I want to say, Purple, definitely, we want to have you back, and I want to just tell you personally, on screen, in front of everybody, that you are in the right place. You are in hip hop. You are in the right place. We need
in the right place, doing the right thing,
like you,
right
in hip hop.
Yeah.
Like right where we need you.
Thank
you know what I'm saying? In hip hop, we need you. You know what I'm saying? So please continue doing it. You know, I got mad love for you. We family. You know what I'm saying?
We family, man. His daughter, y'all. His daughter's a giant.
And just to let y'all know, yeah, she's worked with my daughter too. Shiny. Y'all see her on the turntables and stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, she does.
We had her in the studio already.
Right. She nice at everything.
Yeah.
They're coming.
Dancing, all of that. Yeah, she does it all. Word up. So big ups, Purple Haze, and good looks for coming through. And yes, I have to ask you the question that we always ask our guests, especially when they're here for the first time.
Okay.
And this is perfect for you. Who is your favorite hip hop artist or group, or who in hip hop inspires you the most to do what you do in life? I know. That one gets hard for someone like you.
Right. Because we always say like the one, right? I'd be like, yo, I don't do no monolithic. Nah, I'm joking. You know, I'm gonna answer this. I'm still gonna answer this without saying the one, right? I'm gonna do this. KRS-One to me was the most important teacher, right? When I read his book, Illumination. To me, he's the best hip hop MC of all time.
Yeah.
My favorite MC of all time is Biggie Smalls. Talk about that one. And the person that inspires me the most to do and be who I am today is the honorable, powerful, giant, living legend, Lauryn Hill.
Yeah. Salute. All right. Salute to all three. And you know, we just had I hate to say the anniversary, but the anniversary of Biggie's passing.
Yeah, March 9th.
25 years. That's hard to believe it's been that long.
That's crazy, right?
March 9th. I remember where I was, and in his album Life After Death, which I got the vinyl, came out on March 25th, which is my birthday. I'll never forget that. That's how I kept. I came back to rhyming after that.
Wow. See, we definitely got to have you back, Purple, because you know, this wasn't enough time. Obviously, we got to have you back because there's so much to you. There's so much depth to you. I want to speak to you, you know, behind scenes about some stuff. You know about the National Black Political Convention coming up in August?
Yeah. Yes, Daha told me about it last night. That's right. Let's go, Newark. Thank you, Newark.
Right. So I want to talk to you and see, you know, if we can try to, you know, work something up, whip something up real quick or whatever, you know.
I'm here to serve. You know, tell me to show up. I'll prepare, and that's what we do.
Yep. That's what it is. That's what it is.
And I know that as we're heading out, just, you know, for Zayid, Chairman Ham, Rhino, how do you like close us out? What final things to say? Things we need to that we need to notice, and then finally, Purple. We're going to give you the last word overall. So Zayid, Chairman Ham, Rhino, and then Purple.
I'm just going to say this was one of the most loaded and layered shows we've had in a while, and we do good shows, right? But this is the first time we've had, you know, an extended session with somebody that's in and on and representing the culture the way daughter has, the way daughter does, right? So that, you know, and coming off of conversations with, you know, heavy stuff, losing somebody to the police, you know, challenges of trying to lead in the electoral arena and all of its contradictions and conflicts, right? The question of how we going to tell these stories, the journalist piece, right? And then she coming in and just walk through all those layers of all that history and how it shaped her and made her and how she got her doing the things that does not get promoted about the culture and its value.
She represents the light of the future. She's representing the light of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, remind me where things could have gone, didn't quite get there at that point, right? And I hope it comes through this next wave when you know when Soldier, you know, became that boom, that loud voice for you know, for your crew's age, Rhino, right? Yeah. And folks just wasn't ready to hear what she was trying to say, and she had to pull back, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, daughter, love, honor, respect. I'm proud of you, right? And you know, I can remember when you were quiet in the cut, right? Yeah. And how you just, you know, and you learned, and that's how we do. That's who we are. That's how the spirit of our ancestors works through us.
All right, Chairman Ham.
Well, Sister Purple, you know, I wasn't even supposed to be on right now.
That's what you thought.
That's what I thought, right?
But and then you are.
and then you started dropping that science. I had to sit here and listen. I couldn't say anything. You was dropping it. And I'm so proud of you. And I was learning. I was the student tonight. So thank you. Thank you for being as deep as you are. I was just sitting here, Rhino. I just kept saying over and over, that's deep. That's deep.
Yeah, that's important. That's one of my teachers.
So Rhino.
So definitely, you know, Purple, as I said, you are the light of the future. You know what I'm saying? Like as Zayid said, you know, when you got a heavy load weighing on you, and then at the end to see a light at the tunnel, you know what I mean? There's a little light at the end of the tunnel. You know that there's something to work for. There's something that we're doing this for.
Never give up. That's right.
And you know, when you're working with kids, you know, that's the future. You know what I'm saying? And when you drop in like everything that you just dropped here, and I'm a full-grown adult, you know what I'm saying? But I can imagine how that could work on a child, you know what I'm saying? On somebody so impressionable, you know what I'm saying? So you're definitely working our future right now, you know what I'm saying? So thank you for what you're doing and keep doing it. Don't stop doing it. And you know, as far as the people watching, of course, I gotta tell y'all,
won't stop.
Yeah. Tomorrow, of course, 3 p.m. twitch.tv/RhinoCMZ. The Shake Up, 3 o'clock. I'm going in, y'all. The rest of this month, I'm going in for the sisters, for the women.
Beautiful.
Check me out tomorrow. I believe tomorrow I'm doing the women. You know, and this is perfect right here because I'm doing women of hip hop tomorrow.
Hey, of course you are, man. You're the perfect person to do it. Yeah, CMZ.
All right.
All right. So,
Yeah, so that's tomorrow at 3 p.m. twitch.tv/RhinoCMZ for the full shakeup.
And Purple, you have the last word. So when you say good night, I'm just ending the broadcast. So will you give me say good night? See you next week, right? You know, all politics are local next week. You know, that'll be the final word. So you got the final word. Tell me when to end the broadcast.
Okay, listen, I'm gonna do this because it's special. Since Brother Ham said he didn't even know he's gonna be here tonight, right? There's a chant that I say to myself because of the time I got to be in space with Pop, street, building, bus, whatever. Power to the people, the people's organization, the organization for progress, P-O-P, Pop. That mantra, power to the people, organization for progress, peace, love, unity. All politics are local. Have fun, y'all. Let's live.
And you don't stop.